What's happening, people? My name's DJ Graish, and in today's live stream we are making a jungle tune live on the airwaves. So if anyone's there in the chat, let me know if you can see me, let me know if you can hear me, and let me know how the mic's sounding. Let me know if you can hear the music. So in today's stream, I'm going to show you how to chop up breaks in two different ways. I got a couple of comments during the week that the intro version of Ableton Live doesn't include slicing to a new MIDI track. So I decided that in today's stream, I'm going to show you how to do it the audio way. Shout out Richie, thank you, man. And I tried to have the vocal slightly louder this week, and it's possible that it could be getting a little bit saturated. But as I was saying, there's various different ways you can chop up breaks. And for the people who are using the intro version of Ableton Live, they don't have the option to slice to a new MIDI track. So I'm going to show you how to do it in an audio channel, and anyone will be able to do that way. And I'll also show you the MIDI way as well for the people who've got Ableton Standard or Suite. You'll be able to chop up the breaks. We're going to be making bass lines, we're going to be making pads, we're going to be using audio samples. And that reminds me, I need to airdrop the audio sample from my phone to the laptop right now. Which one was it now? Alright, so during the week I heard a little sample on Mixcloud and I thought that'd be perfect for a jungle tune, so let's see how it fits in a bit. So there's a guy whose name is in a different language and I don't know how to pronounce it, but big up and welcome. And I've got a question from Adam Lewis asking me if I still use the push to produce, and the answer is yes. However, I've not used it for a little bit, but there's definitely going to be more push content coming soon, and I'm going to be using it a lot more in the coming weeks. And it's coincidental that you asked me, because I was actually watching my how to make jungle on the push tutorial back the other day. Now obviously the video, like what I say in the video in that, is pretty good, but the camera angle was terrible, the audio wasn't good, so there's a lot of room for improvement. But one day, very soon, I will be making another push tutorial that's just going to be so much better in every way. So let me know where you tuned in from. Let me know how your weekend's been. Here in Barcelona, we've got lovely weather today. Yesterday was quite cloudy and actually quite foggy. And in a minute, I'm going to start, but let me just maybe crank down the mic just a little bit if it's sounding warm. I think it's because I took it too far with the boosting. Big up everyone who's locked in, everyone in the chat and everyone who's not in the chat, and big up the people who are watching this back at a later stage. So the tune's finishing now and we'll get started. So that tune's called Side Quest, and I made a tutorial on how I made it, and it's called How to Make an Orchestral Drum and Bass Track. So if you're interested in learning how I made that tune, check it out on my channel. So I'm just going to make a new live set. I'm not going to be saving side quest. Alright, and let me just full screen this. Now, for the people who are quite new to Ableton Live, this is what it looks like when you start a new project. And it usually just comes with 4 tracks. We've got 2 MIDI tracks, 2 audio tracks, and there's also these which are called return tracks. They are just like auxiliary channels that you can send your stuff to using these knobs here, send A and send B. And you can send it to the reverb, you can send it to the delay, or you can make extra return channels to send stuff to and put all sorts of different effects on there. So they're pretty useful. And the way how I usually do this is basically I delete the channels that I'm not going to be using to start with, because whenever you bring anything in where it says drop files and devices here, you know, it'll just create you a new channel anyway. So you don't need these empty tracks. So with that being said, I'm going to delete 2 MIDI tracks and an audio track and just stay with the 1 audio track, okay? Now over here, if you click this arrow in the top left, it's going to open up your file browser. You've got, basically this is where you've got everything. You've got your instruments, you've got your effects, you've got all the VST plugins that you might have downloaded. And if you keep going down, then you've got your actual files. And I've got all of my samples in a folder called production. So I'm just going to click production. And then if I scroll down a bit, then there's one called Jungle Breaks. And in this folder, I've got a lot of different breakbeats. So for the people who don't know, a breakbeat is essentially, it's a sample of an old track. Well, it doesn't have to be old, but most of the ones that we use in Jungle are from back in the day. And they're usually from a funk tune. And like, what would happen in these funk tunes is like halfway through the tune, they would just give the drummer a little solo. Maybe it's just 1 bar, maybe it's 2, maybe it's 4. But they'd give the drummer a little opportunity to play by themselves. And it just makes the perfect samples because they're like funky drums and they have nothing else with them. It's just the drums. So now that you know what a break is, let me play a couple of them for you so you can hear what they sound like. So this is one that I love to use and it's called the Hot Pants Break. What I'm going to do is really quickly, I'm just going to go to my audio effects, grab a limiter, and this is something that you won't need to do, but I'm just doing this for the sake of the live stream. I'm just going to boost it up a bit. And actually, I'm going to turn up this monitoring thing here as well. Let me know how this sounds in relation to my voice when I play the Hot Pants Break. How is that in terms of volume? Much quieter than my voice, or is it about right? So that's an example of what a breakbeat sounds like. Obviously it's looping round, but that was just 2 bars of a drum solo from a funk tune. So big up Richie, thank you. And shout out to the Pacific Northwest crew. So I'm guessing that for you guys it must be like, what is it, 10 o'clock in the morning or something like that. So you're starting early with the jungle session, but I really appreciate you guys tuning in. And those of you who've heard jungle before and love jungle, you'll probably recognize these drums. So I've heard that this is literally the most sampled tune in history, and it's called Amen Brother by the Winstons. So you can just get this track, get the original track, Amen Brother by the Winstons, and then you can take that sample from the original track, or you can get it from various different sample packs, old school sample packs, new sample packs. Obviously the newer ones, you're probably going to be able to find versions of it that are where somebody's already sort of processed it, boosted it up, done all sorts of different things to make it sound more modern. But what I've got here is the raw version, and it sounds like this. So for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to use the last 2 bars. So where does it start? Right, so if we just click there before this kick here. Now there's various different shortcuts that you can use in Ableton Live, keyboard shortcuts, and if you're using a PC, then you'll be pressing Control and a different letter. So for example, you're probably familiar when you're using text and stuff, you use Control and C to copy, Control and V to paste, and in Ableton we have those shortcuts too, but then there's all these different ones. And I'm using a Mac, so I'm saying Command. So if you ever hear me say Command and this, Command and that, for the Windows crew, you just think of it that I'm saying Control, because it's the same thing, So on a Mac, it's Control and E to edit or split the clip into 2. So I've clicked on this little line here, Command and E, and you see how you've got the left clip and the right clip. It's split it into 2. And what I'm going to do is literally just click that left one and delete it. Now I should have a perfect 2 bars of the Amen break. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put the project tempo to an appropriate tempo for jungle. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I did a bit of a debate on here of what is an appropriate tempo for jungle. Some people think that it has to be above 160 BPM. I'm more in the camp that say it can be lower if you want. You could make a 140 jungle tune if you want. But in today's tutorial, we will be going above 160. In fact, one tempo that I love to use is 163. So let's go with that. Now, what we want to do is first of all, we want to get this sample so that it is 163 BPM, so it's matching the project tempo. But what I'm going to do first is there's this tiny little bit at the end here, and I'm just going to get rid of it. So I'll just hold down Command, click at the end of the clip, and just drag sideways a tiny bit, and you see how that last little extra bit disappeared. Now, I've double clicked on it, and you go into this view, and it might look like this for you, or if you drag upwards, you kind of get a bit more of a full screen view of it. And here, where it says warp, this is your time stretching algorithms. So this is the way that Ableton is going to change the tempo of these drums to fit your project. Now, it's very clever how it does it, because there's ways that you can time stretch it or change the tempo without it really even changing the pitch of the drums. So back in the day, obviously, when you were using a vinyl and you wanted to make it faster, it would get more high pitched and all the vocals would go squeaky and everything would sound super high pitched. But in the modern digital era, there's technology where you can make it as fast as you want without it going squeaky if you want to. But with that being said, in the early 90s, that they were doing it more in the other way where things would get squeakier, right? So what I'm going to do here is put this to repitch. Now, let's go back to our clip. And as I was saying, this is 2 bars of the Amen break. Now, if I zoom out a bit, you can see I've got it starting at bar 13. And perhaps to make this a little bit easier to understand, I'll put it to bar 1. And look, it goes to 2 and then it goes to 3. So you could say this line here is where we want it to end. So what I need to do is grab the end of the clip but hold down the shift button and bring it over to the line to make it 2 bars long. Now, this little thing here at the top is called the loop markers, and if we put that over here and just drag it so that it is 2 bars, with a bit of luck now when I play it, the amen break should be a perfect 2 bars, and obviously it's going to be pitched up a bit as if you've played the record faster, right? So this is what it's sounding like. And if I press Command and L, or you see this little yellow button at the top with this loop symbol, that's the loop button. So you can do it with Command and L or Control L on Windows, or you can press the little button with the loop symbol and make it loop round over and over again like this. Now here's the fun part. Because we are going to be making jungle, what we want to do is chop this up into little slices, and then we can rearrange them however we want. But before I do that, I'm just going to do one thing. I'm going to right click on the track here where it says Amen Brother and you've got the track name. I'm going to click freeze track, and then I'm going to do the same again, right click, but this time I'm going to flatten the track. The reason why I've just done that is because I chose that repitch algorithm, right? Now what we're going to do is we're going to start moving these warp markers and put it a bit more on the grid. But if I was going to move these warp markers without freezing and flattening the track, then it would be trying to repitch it faster and slower for each slice, and it'd all end up sounding really weird. So that's a little trick where you can make it so that it's going to stay, and this time we're going to use a different algorithm, and I'm just going to choose complex. This time now, when I start moving these warp markers around, so what I'm doing here is I'm double clicking the warp markers and putting them on the grid, and this is going to mean that the amen break, the kicks and snares and stuff are going to be in perfect time. And you'll see why we need to do that in just a moment. But first, let me just keep going with it. So you can see that that one, probably it starts there. So we want that to be kind of on the grid, like that. Next one. Put it there. And it's not every single hit that I'm moving onto the grid, by the way. It's only certain ones like the kicks and the snares. The shuffle parts, we want them to remain loose. So for that reason, you kind of don't warp them onto the grid. All right, let's have a listen and see if it's still sounding good. So I think you'll agree, it pretty much sounds exactly how it did before, but there's one crucial difference. Now when I split it, for example on this line, if I split it, then we should find, in fact, let me just tidy that up a little bit more. We should find that if I split it directly on the line, then these slices are going to be very tidy. And I'll just explain what I mean a bit better. So that's the line of just before the snare, right? If I press Command and E and it splits it there, we should find that I've split it perfectly before the snare. All right, and here's so it starts off with a kick, snare, and then there's this shuffle part. What I'm going to do is actually, if you just put your grid onto an 8th note, I'm just going to split it every 8th note. So you can use your arrows on your keyboard for this. Just press Command and E to split, and then press right on your keyboard. Command and E to split, right on your keyboard. Just keep pressing right and then Command and E until you've gone all the way through it. All right. Yes, Siebes fan. And the Infidel UK, big up. Thanks for joining, guys. So, for those who've just joined us, basically what I've done is I've grabbed the amen break, I've taken the part that I want, I used the repitch algorithm to put it to 2 bars, so to make sure that it's actually at the pitch it would be if you speeded it up to this tempo, and now it sounds like this. And by the way, let me know, guys, because I'm kind of trying to work on the audio levels of my stream. So If you do hear that the microphone's too loud or too quiet, let me know. If you think that the music is too loud or too quiet, let me know. Because essentially I just want to get them balanced, you know. That way you can adjust your volume and you can get it to just the right level and it's not uncomfortable for you. Because I know it's annoying when you're trying to watch a live stream and the guy's waffling. Maybe he's too quiet but the music's too loud or vice versa. Anyway, so the next thing I'm going to do is kind of optional, but here we've got kicks, snares and shuffles, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to color code them. So these two first bits, I know that they're a kick. So we're going to give the kicks the color red. All right, and the next one is a snare and I'm going to give that a yellow. And then these two next bits are shuffles, so we'll make them green. Then that's another kick, so it's red. That one's like a slice of its own. And I've spoken about this on previous videos. It's a very nice slice to use because it's just like a ride cymbal by itself. That one's yellow. It's a snare, so we'll put it yellow. And then the next one's a shuffle. We'll put it green. That one's another kind of unique slice. That one's like a double kick. I'm going to make that one maroon because it's like red, you know, but it's a darker shade of red. Yellow for snare, then two more shuffles, we'll put them green. Like I say, this part is totally up to you whether you do it or not. Now this one's a unique one as well. This is like a kick and a crash at the same time. So our kick was red. Perhaps I'll make this one this pink colour. And then we finish with one more snare. So what we've got now is the amen break chopped up into all its different slices and colour coded, which is going to make it easier for us to rearrange it into a bit of a pattern. So now it's time to get creative. So you can decide to go kick, shuffle, snare, kick, ride, snare, you know, all these different patterns. So for example, the first kick here. Well, you can go through and choose. You've got this kick, you've got this kick, you've got this kick. So you choose which one you think sounds the best and then use it. So I'm just going to use the first one for simplicity. And I'm just going to click it and press Command and C. And then over here on a different bar, I'm going to paste it, right? So over here at bar 4 is where I'm going to construct the little pattern that I'm putting together. Now, before I was talking about this slice here, which is a ride cymbal by itself, and I'll just demonstrate what I mean. So you may have noticed that I chopped this up into eighth notes, and I'm sorry if I'm getting technical now, but an eighth note, you can see that in this green slice here, it's actually got two hits. So it's like a shuffle that goes and it's got those two hits, right? Now in this particular slice over here, which is the same length, it's only got one hit, which is just, which it makes it a very useful slice when you are putting together different patterns with the amen break. And you might notice that it comes a little bit late. Now I don't want to tidy that up, and the reason is because, or do I? The reason why sometimes it's better to not tidy them is because you're trying to preserve the swing of the break. But in this case, maybe I will. Or I'll just put it like that so it's like semi-tidied. Right, so we've got a kick and a ride. We're going to need a snare. So again, the snares, I've made them yellow, so it's easy to see that there's 4 of them to choose from. So you could choose this one. Right, so there's 4, but I'm just going to use the first one. Put that there. So copy it, paste it there. So now we've got this little kick, ride, snare pattern. You know it, ephemeral. Oops. Oh yeah, guys, don't forget to save your project periodically. So we're going to go save as. And let's call it jungle live stream, for simplicity. Jungle live stream. And this thing annoys me. Do you want to delete temporary files or leave them in place? Now, I've found sometimes that when you press delete, it actually crashes. So I just leave it in place, which I know it's probably going to end up wasting storage space on my computer, but I'd prefer that than it crashing. So, you know, by the way, guys, I'm going to go off on a little tangent here, but if you ever get to the stage where you've made loads of tunes in Ableton Live and now your hard drive is sort of clogged up with loads of files, there's a way how you can greatly reduce those files, all the ones you never use, especially if you're the type of person who's recording, like recording guitar takes, recording vocals, recording all these different takes, and then you never end up using most of it. And all you do is go to Manage Files here, and then over on the right it's going to appear with this thing, Manage Project, and you're going to see missing files, external files, unused files. Now in here, I used to be in a rap group where I was recording MCs every weekend, and this unused files section here would get filled with gigabytes worth of takes that we never used. And one day I went through and I tidied it all up and I saved so much space on my computer. So that's just a little side tip for you. If you get really into this and you end up using loads of space, that's a way how you can save some of it. Anyway, so the classic pattern, well, like a drum and bass pattern would be kick, ride, snare, shuffle, shuffle, kick, snare, shuffle, like this. Let's just put that just so I can show you. Kick, snare, shuffle. So if I wanted to loop that there, that's essentially your standard D and B pattern. But that's not what we're doing today. You know, the idea is to get creative and do all sorts of mad patterns with it. So with that being said, I'm just going to get rid of some of this and do it differently. So what I'll do is we'll use this. And by the way, once you've got each hit here, you can just copy them and paste there. So, and you can do like snare, snare. And also you can drag and hold down Alt. If you hold Alt and drag like that, then you can copy it that way. And you can do things like this. If you put it on a 16th note instead, and you can copy bits like that. And then if I hold down Alt and drag this, oops, and just drag this green one over here, here's a different pattern. But the idea isn't just to do one bar. In fact, some people, there's a big debate about what's the difference of jungle and drum and bass. One guy's definition that I heard was it just never repeats the pattern. It just keeps on doing different stuff. Now, I don't know if I agree with that, but I do agree with the concept that instead of just doing a 2-bar loop and then copy and paste it loads and loads of times, the idea is to do a much longer section that just keeps doing all this different mad stuff. So you just hold down the Alt button, and I think it's the same on Windows. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. Hold down Alt and get bits of the break from here and just drag them to where you want them. So I'll drag these two. Needless to say, when you've got two shuffles that were originally next to each other, they're going to go really well together. Another kick. Another snare. And then one last shuffle. So let's hear how this sounds. And I think every time you do another bar, it's good to listen to it all. So do this. You know? And the last snare, is sounding very different, and that could be a good thing, or you could just decide that you prefer to use the other snare. So it sounds like this. In a minute, I'm going to show you some more creative ways to make it different and unique. But for now, let's just keep going. So again, with the kick. And you know, there are no rules to this. You can decide to have each bar starting with a kick, which would be a bit more conventional. But if you want to start the bar with a snare, then that's completely cool too. And then you can do this. This is a classic. Kick, ride, snare, you know, and I'll just show you what that sounds like, which you've almost certainly heard in many jungle tunes, is this pattern here. Siebes fam, I was saying at the beginning before you got here that basically in Ableton Live there's various different ways to chop up breaks, and one of the coolest and easiest ways is slice to a new MIDI track, which is what you're saying there, where you do it on the piano roll. You know, you're doing it with MIDI notes basically, and I'm going to show you how you do that later on in Ableton. But a couple of during the week I got a couple of comments on my how to make jungle tutorial. Coincidentally, you know, because that tutorial's been up for like 6 months or something, but in the same week I got 2 people asking me, can you slice to MIDI in Ableton Intro? And I looked into it and the answer's no. They've saved that feature for the more premium versions of Ableton Live. So for that reason, I decided, well, I'll teach the people how you can still chop up breaks even in Ableton Live Intro, and you can save yourself some money. So big up all of my terrace crew. This is my brother and my mates who are all chilling on the terrace up there in Barcelona. So you guys can learn how to make jungle in the sun. Anyway, well, let's keep going. So we've got 3 bars so far. I'm going to do another bar, and then I'll show you some other techniques of how you can, you know, rearrange these slices in an even more advanced way. So we're going to go kick, shuffle. I keep on using the first snare, and like I say, it's up to you. You can decide to use a different snare each time, or you can just keep using the same one. It's going to sound a bit more uniform. And this is the cool thing about the Amen break. You can slice it in a million different ways and do it in a, you know, the results are going to be completely unique to you. And I'm trying to go quick here, so I'm not even listening to it, but hopefully it sounds good. What does this bit sound like? Actually, do you know what? I've not even used this crash yet, so I'll put that there. So the crash, I don't know if you remember, but I put it as pink. So I'll just paste that there, and that's the one that sounds like this. Alright, so let's listen to all 4 bars. So there's one bit that I don't like, and it's this shuffle here. I don't know, it just sounds slightly different from the other shuffle, so I'm just going to copy this shuffle. Which one was it? That one. Just going to paste that there. Yeah, I don't know if it was you, Siebes fam. Last week someone was saying that, like, even though you're not even using Ableton, you still can learn a lot from these tutorials. So I really appreciate you being here. You know, I watch tutorials from people who use Logic and different platforms and stuff. So, you know, you can still get something out of it. So anyway, I was saying before, there's certain other things you can do to rearrange this break. So one thing you can do is, if you get one of these slices, double click it, and then here you've got this button that's got the arrows going both ways. Click that and it reverses the slice. And one thing that I like to do is, like this, have a reverse snare going into a forward snare, and it sounds like this. And maybe it'd be better if it wasn't doing the repeating thing. So it sounds like this. I'm just going to put a kick there. Another thing you can do is you can change the pitch of certain bits. So for example, the crash, you know, this doesn't have to happen every time, but maybe later on in the tune you might want to switch it up a bit and make the crash go like slightly lower. You know what I mean? Anyway, I'll put that one back to normal for now, and we'll keep chopping. As I was saying before, like, it's good to have variety. So instead of just making a 4-bar loop, we're going to keep going. We're going to make it at least 8. And Ephemeral saying, what about if you reverse the second half of the crash? So in the spirit of experimentation, let's do it. Yeah, it works. It kind of works. For now, I'm going to put it back to normal, and then maybe later on, you know, as I was saying, sometimes it's good to have a similar pattern going on in the second drop, but then just slightly change some things to add variety. And then another one you can do is this. This is a way that, like, I was saying at some point about on one of these streams, I was banging on about my production journey and how I started and stuff. And I was saying that I started off as a dubstep producer, and then I started adding the Amen break. Well, I'll show you how you can make a kind of a half-time dubstep sort of pattern using this break. What you do is you do like kick ride, snare, and the snare falls on the third beat, and then you just do like a shuffle, maybe the snare again, and like, listen to this. So you can sort of make it a bit more half-time using that one specific slice, which is the one that I've put in sort of slime green. So that's a little tip for you. Also, don't forget to use the Amen break. Has these double kick, like not the double kick, but the kick like this. 2 slices in a row that are both kicks. And I mean this. And sometimes you can sort of forget that, and you can forget to use it, but I don't like to use it every time, but I do like to sometimes include it. Let's just duplicate these. So, you know, you get the idea. What I'm going to do is where am I up to now? I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've done 6 bars. I'll do an 8-bar loop in this particular tune, just for the sake of like moving on to teach you some other stuff, because we don't want to sit here all day just messing about with the amen break. So I'm going to do shuffle, shuffle. We'll get the crash back involved. That's the pink one here. And that's it. So that will be a total of 8 bars. I think I'm missing a bar. So I'll just move all this over. You know? I'm going to move that over there. Everything should be in 4s or not. It's up to you. But I'm going to do mine in everything's in. You know, it sounds like chaos, but at the same time there is rhyme and reason to it. Let's just do snare, snare, shuffle like that. In fact, I'll use that one. All right, this should be 8 bars now. So I've showed you how to reverse part of it. Another one you can do is time stretch one and use the textured time stretching algorithm. So what you can do is, let's say for example this snare, I might want to double the length of it by holding down shift and then dragging it sideways, and now it's like occupying twice as much space as it was. Then you can go into it, and here where it says warp and you've got complex, the texture algorithm, and then you can change the grain size and just keep playing it until you think it sounds like it's from the early to mid 90s, like that. So let's play it again. And then I'm going to have a kick that's been pitched down by 2 semitones there. Well, let's listen. You know, you can go wild with it. Big up DJ Fully Loaded DMB Mixes in the chat. Alright, so I'm going to press save there. I'm going to leave this in place just in case it crashes on me. And then I'm going to have a sip of my tea. So let me know where you're tuning in from. Let me know if this is your first time watching. And also don't forget to click the like button, because that's going to allow more people to see this in their recommended. And it's going to get more people involved learning how to make jungle, which is always a good thing. So click like. If you're not already subscribed, my name's DJ Graish. I make jungle, drum and bass, and all sorts of different genres, and I make tutorials on how to make it. So I've got a dubstep live stream Loads of Liquid tutorials, different vibes of Liquid, like orchestral. There's one that's like more of a hip hop style with Method Man sample and stuff. Check out all the tutorials on this channel. And big up the Hampshire crew, Seebs fam. So I want to, before I chop up the next break, I just want to let you know that I've launched the membership of this channel, and there is one amazing perk that you can get if you become a top tier member, which is like the $9.99 option. And it's basically a Zoom call where we all get together once a month, and you get to do it's like this, but you'll all be on the call talking to each other and talking to me, and I'm going to give you lessons, feedback on your tunes, and you can ask me any questions you want, and we will all collaborate. So that's the channel membership. It's called Grace Nation, and I can't remember, somebody in the chat once said he was a proud member of Grace Nation, so that's what I called the channel membership. Anyway, so we've got basically the Amen chopped up now, and I'm just going to get rid of this first part here, and it's time to bring in the next break. So I'm going to go to Jungle Breaks, shout out the GOS, and here we've got a little folder within Jungle Breaks which is called Fav, and they're the favourites. So one of the ones in here is called you know what, I'm going to use the Hot Pants break because it's really easy to chop. Why? Because it's much easier than the Think break because there's less to do. So do you remember before, the first thing I did was I wanted to pitch it up, but I was using the repitch algorithm. So let's have a listen to how the Hot Pants break sounds when it's at this speed. So now I'm just going to freeze and flatten it, and for the ones who weren't here at the beginning, the reason why I do this is because it allows the sample to remain time stretched and at that repitched sort of time stretching, because I'm going to start moving some of these warp markers around. And for the ones who've tried to do this, what I'm doing now, moving warp markers around while it's on the repitch algorithm, you'll know that it sounds really weird because it's going faster and slower with each slice. So that's the reason why I did that flattening thing, for anyone who's curious. But let's have a listen to it now. Right now, this one's going to be slightly different, and this only works. Big up Seebs fam. He's become a member of Grace Nation level 3, so we will be having a Zoom call together. So the Hot Pants break, yeah? Now this method is strictly for people who've got Ableton Live Standard Edition or the Suite, not for intro. But for any of you guys who've got like the full version, what you do is right click, go to slice to a new MIDI track, and then an 8th note, and you can keep it on an 8th note. By the way, there's different ways to slice it. If you want to slice it by warp marker or by transient, there's all these different ways. And perhaps in a different tutorial I'll show you the transient way and that, but in this way we're just doing it in an 8th note. Now what I did with the Amen break was, in audio I was making each slice 1/8 of a note, right? So it's the same. It's the same timing, but it's the MIDI way. So now that we've done that, I'm just going to get rid of the Hot Pants audio because we now have this Hot Pants MIDI clip. And this is the drum rack. The drum rack is it's a lot of different samplers all put together onto these pads. So if I double click the first slice, you'll see that it opens up here, and that's the kick. So we've got slice 1. And by the way, the first thing you need to do is turn this loop length down to nothing. And then you can go through these. And what I recommend you do is go through each slice and make sure that they're all tidy, because if we look at slice 2, right at the end, you can see that it's got this extra bit where it's trying to bring in the next slice. And if you just bring that back and then press it again, it sounds a lot cleaner. And then with the start of it there, you might want to put that back there. So just go through, just look, and ones that are like that, where it's untidy at the end, you just need to tidy it up a bit. And this one's extremely untidy. So I'm going to bring that right back to there. So this is slicing to MIDI. And I don't know if you're still about, but there's a guy called Adam here before. He was asking me about if I'm still using the push. So I've got a controller called the Ableton Push 2. And that basically has this big colour screen on it where it allows you to do all this stuff directly on the controller without touching your mouse or your keyboard or looking at the computer screen, which is quite fun. It's just a different way of doing it, and it gets you, especially if you're the type of person who works on a computer all day looking at your computer screen, you can be more concentrated on just looking at this device in front of you and feel like pretty much as if you're using an old school drum machine from back in the day. And there is actually a Push 3 out now that's independent from the computer. So you don't need to use your computer at all. You could go out in the forest and lean against a tree and make a jungle tune if you want. So anyway, now the hot pants break, all the slices are tidied up. Let me just solo it and play this. So as you can hear, it still sounds pretty similar to how it did before, but the difference is that now we have everything on this inside this piano roll, and we are able to rearrange these slices within a MIDI clip. So one thing that I like to do is try to get into this view where I can see all three. So I can see the amen break. Let me just make these a bit smaller. So I can see the amen break. I can see my Hot Pants MIDI clip, and I can see inside the MIDI clip, which is this view down here at the bottom. Now what I want to do is go through and look at each slice of the amen break and try to match what it's doing within the Hot Pants break. So we start with a kick, and by the way, there is a little headphone symbol here that you can click and turn on. And when you click on the piano now, you're going to be able to actually hear what you are doing. So the first three slices are fine because it goes kick, hat, snare, which is mirroring pretty much exactly what the amen break's doing. And then the amen goes back to the kick. So what you do is, get this slice here, put it back down to slice one, which is the kick. Now what are we going to do here? Because as you can see, the amen break's got a reversed crash. Well, one thing you could do is go into the Hot Pants break, and perhaps it's going to be a wise idea to start renaming these. So we've got kick. I'm just going to call this one hat. One person told me off because the amen break, you know, that special slice that's like light green, I was calling that a hat. Someone corrected me and said it's a ride, so now I call it a ride. I'm going to call that one a shuffle. In fact, I'll call it shuffle 1. Shuffle 2. Please bear with me. Kick 2. There's only 16 of these to do. Snare 2. That one's like a kick shuffle. I don't know what to call that. Kerfuffle. Kerfuffle. Alright, we're going to call this one kick 3. Is it a hat or is it a shuffle? Hat 2. Snare 3. I'm going to call that one a shuffle again. So that's shuffle 3. Kerfuff 2. Snare 4. So these are basically, it's a shuffle and a kick, that's why I'm calling it kerfuffle. So just to let myself know that it's a shuffle that does have a kick in it as well. And to be perfectly honest with you, I probably would prefer to use the normal shuffles. So I'll be using probably shuffle 1, shuffle 2, shuffle 3. And especially like for the people who are using like proper speakers or headphones, you'll hear that the ones that I've called kerfuffle have like a lot more low end in them, and I don't want that. So I'm going to avoid those slices. Anyway, going back to what I was doing before, right? We can choose one of these snares to reverse. Like maybe snare 3 can be reversed. How do we do that? We go in. Go to controls. Maybe I have to put it onto one-shot mode. Uh-oh. Hey, maybe it's that R there. No, it's not that R. There's definitely a control to make it. Yes, so Savaged Regime is asking if your slices can all be individually EQ'd. Yeah, and I'll show you how to do that right now. So let's say, for example, this hat here. We don't want this to have very much bass in it. So all you have to do is go to your audio effects here, grab the EQ8. Now, let me just show you something. If you put the EQ8 after the whole drum rack, you're going to see that it's looking very separate and it's got this little meter in between, which you see sort of like the level on the meter, right? Now watch what happens when I drag this EQ8 onto the hat itself on the drum rack. And I'll double click. Now, the EQ8, it's a very subtle difference because it's still there directly after the drum rack, but you see how there's no meter in between? That means that this is connected to one specific pad on the drum rack. In this case, it's the hat. All right, so now, obviously this EQ8 has a little frequency analyzer built into it, like a spectrum analyzer built in. You'll see that you only see level whenever the hat plays. And the rest of the time there's nothing there. So that's another clue that this EQ8 is only affecting that one slice. So what we can do now is for example, get rid of almost all of the low end. So that's how you do it, Savaged Regime. Big up yourself. I've not seen you around here before. So welcome to the stream. Are you using Ableton Live? I'm just going to do that same thing with a couple of these others. So I'm just going to drag the EQ8 onto the snare and just roll off below 200. And you see how it only shows level on the spectrum analyzer within the EQ8 whenever the snare hits. Now you do need to be really careful with this, because if you start EQing too aggressively on the individual slices, it can make your break sound really disjointed and just sound weird. So for that reason, tread carefully when EQing individual slices. And sometimes it's better to just get rid of these EQs. Just EQ the whole break as a whole, you know. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, each one of these, within each, like basically what this is a simpler. You know, if you go to your instruments, you'll see one of them's called simpler here. Well, what the drum rack is just like loads of different simplers, which are all connected into one device. And as you probably know, the simpler does have this filter here, which you can put onto a high pass, choose your frequency, and do it that way. So yeah, there's many different ways to do things in Ableton Live, and it's like you're just constantly discovering new stuff, so it's really cool. Anyway, I'm glad you asked that, because you kind of got me off the hook, but I'm just going to have to dive back in and admit to you guys that I've forgotten where the reverse button is. But there definitely is one. So if any of you guys can remember where it is, just let me know, and we'll reverse one of these kicks. And I think I was possibly on the right lines when I said that you have to choose a different mode. You see how you've got one shot, you've got classic, and you've got slice. Anyway. Sometimes you just have to hunt and you will find it. For the meantime, I'm just going to leave a little gap there, okay? So I'm going to take this off solo now so you can hear the amen as well. I'll turn the amen down a bit. In fact, maybe I should turn the hot pants up. Which way do you like to do it, says Seebs fam. I would say putting individual EQ 8s onto the slices is how I have done it in the past. More recently, I just haven't been EQing individual slices for the reason I said before, because it kind of makes it sound a bit disjointed, and I prefer to just EQ a break as a whole, and it just sounds more cohesive. So I'm just going to turn down the amen for a while I'm sort of programming this hot pants over the top of it. So it goes kick, hat, snare. And as you can see, each time you click one of these slices, it highlights it there, and you can see it compared to what's going on in the amen break. So there, that should be a kick. This one, I was saying, it should be a reverse snare, but rather embarrassingly, I've forgotten how to reverse within the drum rack. And then we've got snare, snare, shuffle, back to the kick. Right, let me close this. And as you can see, each time I highlight one, it shows you exactly where it is in comparison to the amen, which is handy. Wait. Shuffle, shuffle. Snare. Sorry if this is annoying you. I'm going to just delete this one because as you can see it's like a snare that's been elongated, so we don't need anything there. And then a shuffle. And that's it for that bar, or that 2 bars. And what I basically need to do is create a much longer MIDI clip that's this long. So the way how you can do that is, you see my MIDI clip is 2 bars long now, and I need it to be 8 bars. So what I do is I highlight the whole section that I want to extend it to, press Command and J, so you can think of that as join. It's usually like when you're joining things together into one clip, you press Command and J. In this case, it's actually a consolidate. So the shortcut is consolidate, Command and J. That consolidates or turns that into one big massive MIDI clip. And I'm going to move the loop marker over to this next section here and keep going, adding the MIDI notes along. And I'm sorry if this is tedious, but by the way, this is what it's going to sound like. Now listen to the hot pants by itself, and then layered with the amen. So as you can hear, together they sound pretty sick, so it is worth putting in the effort to do this. So we're going kick. I'm going to try and go more quickly now, so perhaps I'll stop waffling for a bit. What I'm doing is I'm pressing Command and D, which is duplicate, and it makes a new MIDI note, right? So, for example, that one's on the kick, right? Command and D makes a new one. Then the arrows up and down to put it where you want it. In this case, shuffle, okay? So I'm going to go really fast now because I just want to get this done. Where there's a crash on the amen, I'm just going to use a kick on the hot pants. And then I'm going to leave a gap because the crash is like 2 eighth notes long, and then snare. Alright, now we're on to the next 2 bars. Make it loop this, not that I'm actually looping anything. I just like to put the loop marker there just like to sort of highlight the section I'm working on. Right, and then it's the last 2 bar section now. Nothing there, then a shuffle, then a kick, and then finally a snare. Alright, let's have a listen how this sounds together. Alright, this is the last bit, but here's all of it. Big up Time Storm. So if you've just joined us, what we've done so far is we have chopped up breaks in 2 different ways. The first way is the audio way. So basically you just get an audio clip, split it into different sections, which are all mainly 1/8 note long, and then I color coded it in these raster colors, and then I rearranged it into my own pattern, and I did some little tricks like reversing parts of it, slowing parts of it down, time stretching parts to try and make it sound more interesting and make it sound like old school jungle, and that sounds like this. Now, there's another way how you can chop up breaks in Ableton Live, and it's basically getting the break audio, right click, slice to a new MIDI track, and then you can rearrange it in a similar way but using MIDI notes, and it ends up looking like this. And then I basically tried to match the pattern that I'd made with the amen break, and it ended up sounding like this. Now it sounds a bit gappy and it sounds a bit weird, but when you put them together, I think you'll agree that you can't really notice the gaps in the hot pants break anymore because the amen's filling them in. So that's basically the drums. Like, obviously, we're going to do more in a bit, but I'm going to move on to doing the bass line now. Before I do, I just want to say, big up everyone for tuning in. Thank you for being in the chat, for the people who are chatting and interacting. And you are welcome to give me suggestions if this is your first time here. This is kind of an interactive stream where people are welcome to give me suggestions on what you think I should do, add bits, whatever you think I should do to the tune. And if you haven't already clicked the like button, please do. It's going to help the YouTube algorithm push this out to more people. And it's going to help someone learn how to make jungle. So with that being said, let's move on to doing a bit of a bass line. So I'm going to go to instruments and get the simpler and just drag that in here. And one classic old school way that people used to make bass lines back in the day is just by getting this 808 kick. What it really is a kick from a drum machine called the Roland TR-808. And it's just like a very weighty sub-bass filled kick, and it looks like this and it sounds like this. Alright, so it's just, I don't know if you've, for the people who are wearing headphones, you probably heard how bassy it is. If you are listening on your TV or like on just like your iPhone speaker, you probably just heard kind of a click. But don't worry, because there are ways that we can make this more audible on all sorts of different speakers, including phone speakers, laptops, TVs, and all the rest of it, And obviously what you need to do is strike a balance between making it weighty for the people who do have good speakers and making it audible for the people who don't. So I like to call them the whack speaker crew. So you've got to make it accessible to the whack speaker crew, but you've got to make sure it still sounds massive for this, on a sound system, or for the people who actually have good speakers or headphones. So how can you do that? Well, first of all, let me just say that this sample is not really perfectly in tune. So when you play this on the keyboard, it's going to be out of tune with the other instruments that you might want to add to it. And the way how you sort that out is you get this tuner within Ableton Live and you put it after your simpler, and watch what happens when I press the C key now. You'll see that it's actually showing as an F sharp, and it's also completely out of tune. So it's showing the wrong note, and it's also like way out of tune. So I've done this many times, so I know exactly what what settings to put it to, and that's transpose it up by 6 semitones, detune it up by, I think it's 46 or 47, and you'll see that it is now a perfect C. Now, again, the reason why you want to do this is, let's say you've got like a virtual piano VST, and you are playing a D chord, D minor, right, on your virtual piano. Now, you want to go to your MIDI keyboard and press a D and play your 808 sub bass along with the piano. What would have happened before I tuned it is that you'd be playing the complete wrong note, and not only that, but it would be like halfway between two of the notes, so it'd sound completely whack and out of tune. Now that I've tuned it so a C is a C, now if I press a D, that's an E, there's a D, you can see that every note is perfectly in tune. Okay, so that's the reason I do that. Now, talking before about the whack speaker crew, you guys probably can't hear it, especially if I turn up this attack here, which basically takes off the little click from the beginning. Now, you're probably hearing absolutely nothing. But if I add this saturator here, turn down the output by a bit, and then turn up the drive by a bit, hopefully now you'll be able to hear it. And what I like to do is try to match the input and the output, so that if you're doing it by 14 dB, turn it down by 14 dB, and it should still be roughly the same volume that it was, but it's just much dirtier and much more audible for the wax speaker crew. So let's listen to our drums again. So one thing that you can do, one thing that's like absolutely classic, and you know, when it comes to bass lines, it's pretty much the way people usually do it. If you're in a band, right, and the drummer's playing, and every time they kick, they hit the kick drum, the bassist would play a note, right? That's one way you can do it. And it's the same with jungle. So you can see that the kicks are the red ones. And let me just make a massively long MIDI clip here. And Shift, Command and M. And big up Tara Bass. Late but still great. So we've got an 8-bar section here. So I'm going to make a massive 8-bar MIDI clip. And the way you do that is highlight this section here. Shift, Command and M. And then double click it and go into it. And you'll see when I play the keyboard, then you'll see the notes there, right? So, and one thing I always say that is when it comes to making bass lines, it's always a good idea to have a spectrum analyzer involved. Why? Because when I play a note, I need to make sure it's not really any lower than 40 hertz. And the reason why I choose 40 is because, you know, when it comes to your average pair of speakers, hi-fi speakers, for example, they might have like an 8-inch cone. They're going to go down to about 40 hertz. Someone with a car stereo probably can hear down to about 40 hertz. Obviously, if you go and see like a proper sound system, then it might go lower down to about 30. But I generally tend not to put any notes down between 30 and 40 and try and keep it 40 and above. But you don't want them to be too high. So for that reason, you don't really want them to go any higher than about 90, especially that your kick is up there. So you don't want them to interfere with your kick. So there's only kind of a narrow band. Look, let me show you. So here's the spectrum analyzer, right? And here, down here in the bottom left in blue, you can see it actually shows you the hertz, right? So here's 40. That's 40 there. And then if I move my arrow across to 90, it's only there. So this area here is only a very narrow section of the frequency analyzer that you're really aiming for, you know? So that's enough nerdy talk. Let's try and come up with a bass line. So, by the way, on Ableton Live, if you go to Options and Computer MIDI Keyboard, you can play your computer keyboard like like an actual musical keyboard. And I know it's not the ideal way to do it, but it's basically free if you've already got a laptop. So you can just play it like that. What note is that? Let's have a look. Oops. So if you're someone who's not that musically inclined and you play a note on the keyboard and you're like, I have absolutely no idea what note that is, all you do is you press it and hold down, and you'll see that when you go into your MIDI clip, you'll see how it comes up in this case it's red, but it's basically whatever color the clip is. So hold it down and then just look for the note that's highlighted in a color, and then hover your mouse over it and it'll say it's F. So what we could do is, you know, it's like you can either press record and do this and play the keyboard, or if you want to, you can just draw in the notes like this. But one thing that's good to do is maybe make them slightly late, like that. So if you hold down the command button and then do that, why is that? Well, think about the headroom. So when the kick is kicking, right, that's going to take up a lot of headroom. If you've got your 808 kicking at the exact same time, then the two of them are going to sum together and make it even louder. And what that's going to do is going to make it more difficult to make this tune loud in the end. But if you make your note come slightly late, then you're giving the kick an opportunity to sort of do its thing and then get out of the way. So, as I was saying before, one easy way of doing bass lines is to sort of make them go along with the kick pattern. Now, you don't have to rigidly follow it, but it's just kind of a guideline of what you could do with your bass line. So we've got kick, kick, like this. So actually, put that back to an eighth. I think the second one comes there. And don't forget to side chain it, says Tara Bass. Definitely. Although back in the early 90s, they probably weren't doing that. Or maybe they were, who knows. Let me know in the chat if you guys think they had side chaining compression in 1993. What should we do? Dum dum. Yeah, so Seeb's fam saying they probably did it manually, which is, you know, just basically move it a little bit later to get it out of the way. Oh, you mean like ducking down the fader? So someone would sit there for the entire tune, and every time there's a kick, they'd go shoop on the fader of the mixing desk. Maybe it should go dum dum. So trial and error basically is the name of the game. So it's on a live stream. Obviously, it kind of gets a bit tedious if I just keep playing it over and over again. That's why I'm trying to work quickly with it. But also, I'm not taking my own advice here. Remember I said about the spectrum analyzer, and I'm putting in notes, and I'm not looking if they're in the ideal region. So let's have a look. So I've got them right up here. Trying to cater to the wax speaker crew, and it should be the octave below. So let's go back in here, and I'll show you how you can easily switch octave, right? All you have to do is to highlight everything on a Mac, Command and A, on Windows, Control and A, hold down your Shift button and press down once. That's it. It's in the lower register. And now it's going to be in the perfect. To be honest with you, the F is going to be perfect. That C sharp is too low now. Let's have a look. Right, the C sharp is hitting at 34. So do you remember I was saying before? You would probably hear that on a weighty sound system. So you as a producer need to decide whether you're trying to make this tune for only people to hear in the club, or whether you care that the general public will be able to play it on their speakers or their mobile phone or their laptop or their TV. Wait. So someone asked me what version of Ableton Live am I using. This is version 11. I do have version 12 as well, but you know, sometimes I like to use 11 because I I do have students who use 11 as well, and it's like I like to all be using the same version. But someone was asking me before about whether I still use the push. I'm going to be bringing out a video soon called "Should You Buy a Used Push 2 in 2025?" And in that video, I'll be demonstrating using the Push 2 with both Ableton Live 11 and 12. By the way, total spoiler, but the answer is yes. It's an amazing device, and it's still quite expensive, even buying a second-hand one. But it does like completely change the game when it comes to using Ableton. Wait. And let me know in the chat if any of you guys have a push or some other kind of MIDI controller that you would recommend using with Ableton Live. See, so whenever you want to copy a note to another place, if you just hold down Alt and then drag it like this, drag it to somewhere, then it will copy it and it'll leave the original one there. Anyway, I'm too busy waffling. Let me play it with the drums. Or you can just highlight notes, press Command and D. That's duplicate. I was saying before, you can make it go along with the kicks, or you can make it go along with the snares, or you can just make it go along with whatever you want. Kind of weird how it goes. It's got that sort of crash sound, and there's a bass note just before it and a bass note just after it, but nothing with the crash. So it's just like, just make it sound good. It's stupid. It sounds stupid advice, but just make it sound good, you know. If it sounds better with having a bass note on where the crash is, then put one there. I like it when it goes doo doo. And you know what's annoying about making a big long one like this? I don't want to keep hearing that those first 3 bars are done now. Well, I'm going to split it up. So I'm just going to split these apart into 4 different sections because it's annoying to keep going back to the beginning. Why does that one sound so weird? And this one, I don't like it how, like I was saying, the crash has a note before it and after it, but not one on the crash. There we go. All right. So as I was saying, I'm going to do it in sections. So that's section 2 done, and then this one. So again, you see with the kicks, you've got the dum dum. This one's got the 2 kicks like that. So you can have kick, you can have bass, bass. You know what I mean? So you can have bass, bass. And as I was saying, it's good to kind of try and leave a little bit of a gap at the beginning. Not mandatory. Maybe I'll just leave a big gap there. Gap. And then a massive long one. Or it could be kick kick. You hear how it's got the kick kick. Bear with me a sec. You know, I know this must be getting boring for you. I'll be done in a second. Right, so one little tip I want to give you. When it comes to making bass notes, like these 2 together, it's really important that you don't let these notes touch each other. And it sounds weird, but just do this, right? Just highlight them both, hold down Command, and just bring it back a bit like that. Why? Because if they run into each other, and even momentarily if you've got both notes playing at the same time, I'm going to demonstrate what it sounds like. I'm just going to highlight them both and listen to how this sounds. Oh, it's not doing it. When I do this, you know what I mean? When you highlight all the notes and they play at the same time and it does that like blah, 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 horrible sound. That happens if you have 2 notes that run into each other. And if you want to prevent it, all you have to do is this. Leave the tiniest gap. And it's a gap that the listener is never going to notice, but it's just going to clean up your bass line so much. All right, and then the last section. Siebes fam, you've just given me the biggest lesson doing this part, where I find I'm going wrong. Which, out of all the waffling that I've just done, which part exactly did you find so helpful? Right, let me just change the grid to a 16th. Maybe this one could move back that way. I'm really happy that I could help you, Siebes fam. Does it need to be like that, or is it that one there? I like that. All right, we're going to have a low E. Now, remember before I was talking about the spectrum analyzer and making sure it's not too low. Now, this low E down here is going to be on the absolute bottom limit of that. Let's watch. So it was like 39, and now he's going on about how you shouldn't really put them any lower than 40. So I'm going to break my own little rule there by 1 hertz. and just hope that the crew have good enough speakers to hear it. But that's the last note out of this whole 8-bar section, so that's just a little treat for the people who do have a good sound system. Anyway, here it is all together. Needs work. Right, so this gappy bit here, I'm just going to close these gaps a bit more. All right, and then there's, yes, exactly, savaged. It's like, I'm glad you said that about metal, because I'm in a band myself. I'm in a rock band and I'm the bassist, so this stuff comes pretty natural to me. But when you really start to analyze what you're doing, you're basically playing a note every time the kick drum hits. Not necessarily every time the kick drum hits, though, but, you know, sometimes it's with the snare, sometimes it's with another drum. But you could say sort of 75% of the time, whenever you hit the bass string, it's going to be with the kick. So I'm still not really happy with this where the crash is. Is it there? Maybe it's there. That's it. Ah, this one. This C here. All right. This C sharp. Anyway, you guys are so freaking patient. Thank you for waiting around while I did that, because to be honest with you, I'm starting to annoy myself with how long it's taken me to do this bass line. But anyway, I was saying to you at the beginning of the stream, for the people that were here, that during the other day I was cycling along wearing my headphones, which is totally illegal in Barcelona, but I was doing it anyway. And I was listening to an app called Mixcloud, where you can listen to different mixes of drum and bass and all sorts of different music. And it got to the end of the mix, and then it played the next mix, and it happened to be Red Bull Culture Clash. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Red Bull Culture Clash 2025, and specifically it was like the final round of the Red Bull Culture Clash, where for those that don't know, it's essentially a competition where people have to come up with like various different creative ways. It's like a sound system competition where they have to come up with dub plates and exclusives to try and beat each other and get the crowd going and all sorts. Anyway, I'll stop waffling. Now, I'm not going to play this whole thing in one go due to copyright reasons, but I'm just going to play you some little snippets. Oops, that's the wrong one. Forget that. What I've done is sent myself the wrong sample. So bear with me because I'm on my phone here and I airdropped myself the sample. That's the wrong one. This is it here. And it's so funny because she's going on about, I don't want to hear no AI, yeah? Right, just airdropping it to the computer. Thank you so much, Siebes fam. Legend. And you are officially in Grace Nation. I'm so happy about that. So anyway, it says waiting. Please don't let me down with the with the airdrop when I'm live on the stream. Come on, man. Okay, here we go. It's coming. It's sending it twice. So, anyway, you know what? I have to be really careful with this because, as you probably, for the guys who are here on a regular basis, you'll know that one of my streams got demonetized the other day, or like 3 weeks ago, from playing some content. But this is the Red Bull Culture Clash. So these different crews get together and have a clash where they try to outdo each other by getting exclusive versions of tunes made. And this is the intro to the Red Bull Culture Clash. Is that the right bit? Right.
Oi, native sound. You could still win, you know. You can still win this.
So I'm only going to play 2 or 3 seconds at a time to be careful.
Somebody 2 points. You could win it on a sneaky one. Take us out with a bang. On a sneaky one. I only want to hear
this girl here. This is a sample. Wait.
I only want to hear dub plates in this round. Okay.
I'm going to cut her off before she says in this round. So just, I only want to hear dub plates.
I only want to hear dub plates.
Just cut her off there. All right. So that's one little bit that I could use.
In this round. I only want to hear remixes in this round. We only want special guest performance. But I'm not trying to hear no AI.
I love that bit. I'm probably not going to use it, but
I'm not trying to hear no AI.
In fact, you know what? We should use it. It's so funny. That just shows the sign of the times, you know, making dub plates in 2025. You've got to tell people not to use AI.
But I'm not trying to hear no AI. Guys.
I'm just going to chop that there. So, by the way, I've turned off the grid by right-clicking and going to off here. And then you get rid of the grid. Now, you can just click anywhere you want and there's no lines, all right? Now, I just clicked exactly where I want it, which is right before she says the sample. And then I just press Command and E, and it sort of splits it off into its own little clip.
But I'm not trying to hear no AI.
And let's keep listening.
Guys, I don't want to hear no AI.
I wonder if anyone was actually cheeky enough to try and make an AI dub plate and sort of play it at the Red Bull Culture Clash. Because if they did, then that is unacceptable.
Because we will know.
We can tell. All right, crews, you've got 10 minutes each. It's all or nothing.
I'm so worried that if I play more than a few seconds, it's just going to flag it. Anyway, it's not even these girls that I'm trying to sample, to be honest. There's a guy just a little bit later.
After that, voice of the street, native sound, this.
Where is it?
Homegrown sound. You spent all that money, you should have got a translator.
I love that bit. Let me play you that bit there.
You spent all that money on PAs and dub plates. You should have got a translator. We can't understand a word you're saying.
I'm going to split that bit out, but I'm not sure about using it. And then there's these gunshots For the people who are here every week, you'll know I'm starting to get a bad reputation for throwing in gunshots in every tune. So, how about that? Just to keep the tradition going.
Wait.
You know, there's so many samples here. I could even just throw that in, like, before the second drop.
Let me talk to them. Man can never talk down on my thing. For the last 15 years, I put my blood, sweat, and tears in this UK rap thing. You can spend a third of your budget on grime MCs, but this dub rap.
Right, this is the one. So picture me cycling along in Barcelona. I've not even tried to listen to this. It just came on after the other mix that I was listening to. And then I hear this.
But this dub right here, this is priceless.
I need to chop him off before he says anything else, but I want this dub right here. This is priceless.
Priceless.
I was like, that is a sample. I'm going to use that on Sunday night stream.
We call this counteraction. But this dub right here, this is priceless.
You know, it's going to sound a bit weird just chopping it off there, but don't worry, because when it's got far too much reverb and delay on it, then you won't notice.
In this round. Okay.
Anyway, let's go back to what we were making. This dub right here, this is priceless. I don't want to hear no AI. Someone told me, you know. By the way, it's kind of ironic because last time I did that one. Last time on the stream, I did one about sampling soul, right? And I've been wondering for ages about this Instagram account called prod.lodoni. Check him out if you want some samples, because it always says sample this, and then it'll say like 89 BPM, and then on the sort of caption it says who y'all hear on this one, and it's always the same. But basically these samples, yeah, someone in the comments section once was saying, where do you actually get all these samples from? And the guy replied saying, me and my mate make them all. So I've made a tutorial using one of these samples ages ago, and then I used another one last week on the live stream, and I don't know if you've seen, but somebody sampled and said that he thinks that sample was made by AI. So it's going to be pretty ironic if I'm now making a tune going, I don't want to hear no AI, yeah? Let's have a look for a pad or something. Now, obviously, with this type of music, it's all about doing it with samples, you know? You can look for instruments within Ableton Live, and obviously I might end up doing some of that. But what I really want to do is try and keep everything samples, because this music originated in a time when there was a lot of sampling going on. And in this production folder, thanks to my student Jason Story, Shout out Jason Story, because for years I've been hearing about these 0G sample discs, and for whatever reason I just neglected to ever bother downloading them or finding them. But they were on my radar, you know, but I just never got them. Anyway, here they are. Jason Story sent them to me, and I have to big him up. And shout out Aaron303 in the chat. And Aaron, welcome. What we've done so far is we've chopped up the amen break in the audio technique, and if I zoom in you'll see what that looks like. I've just done it by splicing it up into eighth notes. We've also got the hot pants break, which I demonstrated how to slice to MIDI, and that one sounds like this. And together the two breaks sound like this. And then the last thing I've just done now is I've got the 808 bass sample, put it into the simpler, played it at all different pitches, and I've added a saturator so the wax speaker crew can hear it, and it sounds like this. And by the way, I'm going, yeah, exactly. You know, the Amen and the 808 are absolute staples, and the hot pants is one of my favourite breaks. So
Man can never talk down on my thing.
That's going to get used. In fact, the ones that I'm going to use, I'm going to put them in a different colour. In fact, it'll stay blue, but it'll be highlighted in a lighter shade of blue like that. And then I think it's this one that's the main sample, the one that made me almost crash the bicycle, is this one.
But this dub right here, this is priceless.
And there was a guy getting busted. So I'm riding down the pavement with headphones on, which is just totally illegal. If the cops see you doing that, they'll be like, they'll give you 2 tickets. They'll be like, why are you on the pavement? Why have you got your headphones on? And I was just there thinking that. I was thinking, I better be careful. Suddenly, this dark blue, like, normal looking car, suddenly it goes, na 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 na. It's got the most old school siren, and it turns out to be an unmarked police car, pulls over a cyclist, and I was like, Jesus, I was so close to getting busted there. So I got off and pushed the bike, and this was all while I was listening and suddenly heard that sample and thought, I'm going to use that on Sunday night. I should have sampled the police siren. Anyway, so I'm a bit all over the place, but I was going to look for a pad in these 0G sample discs. And I want to bear in mind that, you know, sometimes when I try and make something that's supposed to sound like melancholic or sad or dark, and I end up making something, you guys in the chat are all telling me it sounds like something from a carnival or some clown music. So that's not happening this week. It's strictly dark. There you go. Look at that. It's like the old school monks. Medieval monk sound. Well, what you could do is get one of these and play it like, you know, as a chord, and it would make like a nice pad. What I should do is get a simpler, or get a few simplers, and put some of these in and just hear how they sound at the right pitch. Right, so before, do you remember the trick I was showing you with the tuner? So if you go to audio effects, get the tuner and just put it there. Now this, I always say it right, but using your computer keyboard as a musical keyboard, the first note is always a C on a piano, right? But on your computer keyboard, it's actually the A key. So you want to press A, and then you want it to be tuned to C. And another little technique I'm going to show you. If you've got a sample like this and you kind of want it to be able to loop perpetually, because let's say if I want to use this as a pad, right, and I press the key, but I want it to go on longer than this and then it just ends. Well, what you can do is turn on this looping here and then go loop less than 100%, so maybe start it from over here, and then the length, you can just move it around and watch what happens when I press the key now. So it loops over and over again, but then obviously you can hear it's going blah blah. So you turn up this fade and then you hear that. Now obviously you can continue playing with the length, playing with the loop points, playing with the start point, the fades, and just get it to a point where no one will ever know that this is just a short sample, because it just goes on forever. Know what I mean? So that's how you can turn any short pad sample into, you know, a longer one that'll go on as long as you want it to. So now that we've tuned it to C, we can delete the tuner, and basically our bass line starts off in an F, and you could say the key of this tune is going to be F. So what we want to do is make a MIDI clip, maybe 2 bars long. Sorry, that's the wrong track. Make a MIDI clip, maybe 2 bars long. Go into it. Find our F. What's going on? I must have soloed something, yeah. Maybe it could sound good if it wasn't so muddy. So perhaps if I do this, and then if it had like a load of effects on it as well. Not like that. Alright. Just for example, if I put delay here, if I put the hybrid reverb after it as well, and then in the hybrid reverb, you see how you've got these 2 tabs, reverb and EQ. Just make sure you're not really allowing any bass to go through to the reverb. And then by default, the hybrid reverb is on 3.5 seconds, which is a very long reverb time. So for the most part, you're going to want to turn that down a bit. Let me play the tune. Alright, so I'm not sure if I'm going to use this, but so somewhere around here, I'm going to want it to go to that. How's this? Oops. And then, before I was saying, if you've got a shorter MIDI clip and you want to make it longer, highlight that section like that, and just press Command and J on the whole section. Now the MIDI clip fills that whole section, and then you can go in and put in the notes for the second half. And then I want it to go. Do you remember in the bass line I was like loving the C sharp to C combo? And I want it to be much later. So it's like a da-na, da-na. Is it there? No, it's too late. I think it might be like this. You know what, Aaron? I was thinking, I was at my brother's house today. We were having a jam on his terrace and everything. And I just didn't have very much time today. But I was thinking one of the things I could have done is get Amigo sampler and kind of explore it and chop up some breaks with it and see whether I like it live on the stream. But I didn't have time, but could do that next week. If anyone's interested in my take on Amigo sampler, just let me know. And for those who don't know what it is, it's just like a really old school. It's designed to sound like samplers from the 90s and stuff. So if you chop up your breaks using it, then they'll sound more like they're from that era. How about if I layer the C with it, but at a much lower velocity? And just make it into a bit more of an interesting chord sound.
But this dub right here, this is priceless. Priceless.
What I'm going to do is the delay and reverb that are on this, I'm just going to hold down Alt and drag them onto the vocal sample and then play it again. Now, obviously, this is going to be way too much, so let me just turn stuff down a bit. The dry and wet, I'll put it on a bit lower. This delay, I'll put it on quite a bit lower.
But this stuff right here, this is priceless.
Maybe I won't have but, and I'll just have this dub.
This stuff right here, this stuff right here, this is priceless.
I'm not going to have it looping round like that, but sometimes it's good to just put it at the end of the loop and hear how it sounds.
This stuff right here, this is priceless.
You know, how it's actually going to sound just before the drop. I'm not really convinced by the pad sound, so let's just keep looking for them. I'll mute it, and I might use it, I might not. Synth 5 just sounds so familiar, you know, and I couldn't name a tune off the top of my head that it's in, but it's probably literally hundreds of jungle, hardcore, drum and bass tracks and stuff that have this particular synth stab in them. So let's join the masses and add it to our track as well. Now this one, the tuner thing, you know, the little tuner trick that I was showing with the 808, and I used it with the synth pad and stuff. It doesn't work with every sample. And in this case, you're going to have to try and use your ears and see if you think it sounds in tune with the rest of your elements. And my tea's gone cold like Dido. Siebes fam, I was in the mid-90s, in 1995, I was 10 years old, and some of my friends introduced me to happy hardcore, and you used to get these tape packs, and it was like, you open it up like in the same way that you'd open up like a video or DVD case, but it would be like 8 tapes, and on some of the tape packs you would have sort of some of the tapes on one side were happy hardcore, some of the other tapes on the other side were either like jungle or drum and bass or whatever, and there'd always be one tape and the genre of music that they called it at the time was old school, and it was Rat Pack usually, and it was just Rat Pack is like old school rave music. It is absolutely amazing, and I've not heard much from them recently, but it was like, as I understand it, there's like one guy who's the producer and DJ, and then the other guy's the singer, and they're just a dynamic duo. They're just absolutely amazing, so big up Rat Pack. You know what's funny? I'm going to go off on a bit of a tangent now, but you know how people say old school this, old school that, back in the old school days? You know, it's become part of our everyday speech. But back in the mid-90s, no one ever said it like that. They used to say old-fashioned. Have you noticed how no one ever says old-fashioned anymore? They always say old school. Back in 1995, when you said old school, what you really meant was old school rave music like Rat Pack. You know, some of these sound nice, but that's not what I want. I don't want nice today. I want dark. This is going to be a dark jungle tune, and nobody in the chat can tell me this is a carnival tune. I'm only winding you up. Who was it that said it? Was it E.E. Wilson?
But this stuff right here, this is priceless. This stuff right here, this is priceless. This is priceless.
Love that. You know, when I was starting to produce, someone said to me, oh no, actually, I think I heard it in an interview, or I heard it somewhere, that like, it's fine to sample other genres, but it's not fine to sample your own genre. For example, if you're a hip-hop producer, don't be sampling other hip-hop tunes. If you're a D&B producer, don't be sampling other D&B tunes. Now, this Jungle sample pack is basically a sample pack full of samples from other jungle tunes. So I've always been a little bit iffy about using it for that reason, you know? Let me know in the chat how you guys feel about that. Are you fine with sampling other tunes from your genre, or do you agree with that person, whoever it was that I heard in some random obscure interview 15 years ago, and I've been like basing my sampling morals on their opinion for the last 15 years. Awesome pads, Ruben pads. These are too nice. That one's so nice that I just feel like clicking save here and then starting a new tune. There's just like some absolute atmospheric chiller. I need to make a mental note of that one. So it's Can Jungle Inspirations royalty pad. So I have a go at maybe using the Rat Pack thing. Yeah, so Siebes Fam says it's a hard one, but if you make a banger, no matter a sample or not, people should have the chance to dance to it. Well said. I don't think the people on the dance floor really care where you got the sample from. But the person who made the original tune, that's another story. Right, so that's supposed to be an F, right? Using my ears this time. Let me just solo this. And solo the 808. So according to my not so perfect pitch, right, so -7. But if we want to go up a whole, what's it called, octave, then we want to add 12 to that. So that will be +5. So how does it sound like this? Right, I'm not actually going to use this pattern. I'm just kind of checking to see whether this seems like it's in actual tune now. Yeah, it sounds like about right. I mean, why not? By the way, one thing, let me just give you another little tip. You see how obviously it's a sample, so the higher up the keyboard you play it, then it's going to play it shorter, right? So if you play it down here, the sample goes on for longer. If you play it right up here, super quick, right? Now, thanks to modern technology, there is a warp button here within the simpler, and when you press that, Ableton's magic algorithm will make sure that wherever you play it, it will always be the same length of note. Where are we? I don't know if it sounds a bit ridiculous. Also, there is the Complex Pro algorithm, which might sound a little bit better. And how does it sound down there? Why have all these moved over now? I'm not 100% convinced. Just messing about, you know. Sometimes I always say it's like the trial and error is actually the fun part, isn't it? You try something. If it sounds terrible, just delete it. If you think it sounds pretty cool, then keep going. And I always, like, when I do a little melody, I just stick a delay on and try all the different timings of the delay. And some of them might make a new cool pattern when it's delaying it, you know. Not that one, but trying to come up with an example for you. Try it on 2. So the GOS says, make it play this octave and 1 octave higher at the same time. Let's try it. So if we hold down Alt, and you see how it starts on an F, all we have to do is hold down Alt, drag this up, and please excuse the horrendous noise, let go when it's on the F up there, and it sounds like this. And obviously the delay is not something that I'll be keeping. Actually, like that, it sounds a lot better. Yeah, to be honest with you, the GOS, you are onto something there, so big up. Now you might be hearing that some of this melody is on time with the 808 and some of it's not on time. And then you have to decide whether you think that's acceptable or unacceptable. I want to show you another little thing now. So before we go any further, let me just do a little bit of spiel. So big up everyone in the chat, big up everyone who's not in the chat, and big up everyone who's watching this back later. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you being here, and I really appreciate especially the guys in the chat that are giving me suggestions. Like, for example, the GOS has just told me to sort of duplicate the notes 1 octave above, and when I did exactly what he told me to, it did sound sick. So you could say that this is a collaboration now. We're going to have to put both our names on it. And I was saying before, there's a new way how you can support the channel, which is called the Grace Nation, and it's the channel membership. And there's 3 different tiers, and the highest tier, which is only $9.99 a month, actually gets you access to a monthly Zoom call that I'm going to be doing with the crew, where we discuss ideas. I'm going to be giving you feedback on your tunes. I'm going to be answering questions. I'm going to be giving basically like a private class to everybody who is a member of this channel in the level 3 membership, which is $9.99. So if you want to get involved in that, it's quite a cheap way of having a music production lesson, I think you'll agree. if that little rave stab actually goes with this pad. Sometimes it's good to do this, just solo a couple of the elements, play them, see if they actually sound in tune with each other. And you can get little ideas for how to, you know, like do the intro, for example. The intro could be this rave stab and this pad. And then you've got the guy saying this.
But this stuff right here, this is...
He says.
But this stuff right here, this is priceless.
Know what I mean? And it's possible that I might have ADHD or something, because I was about to do something and show you something, and then I just went on an absolute tangent and did something completely different. Anyway, what I was going to show you is, I think it's this shifter here. If I'm not wrong, let me just put that onto the Amen. Now, you must have heard in jungle tunes in the past that when the Amen break is playing, that it just randomly pitches up and down and stuff. Wait. Now listen to this. So you can... yes, I can, Seebs fam. I'll show you how to do the arrangement. In fact, we have been streaming for a while now, but I'm not going yet. Anyway, last time I was talking about arrangement, and I'll just go into it a bit now. Sorry, about automation, I should say. Now, let me just go back to basics with automation. Automation, what it means is making different things move automatically. Essentially, making the knobs turn by themselves. All right, so, for example, I just showed you this control, which is called the course on the pitch shifter. And I'll just turn it again to show you what it does. As you can hear, as I turn it up, the thing goes up in pitch, right? Now, I'm not going to be sitting here turning that knob every time I want to do that. I've got other stuff to be doing, so we want it to turn itself automatically, as the name suggests. So the way how you do this is, first of all, if you've got your computer MIDI keyboard turned on, if you start pressing these letters, it'll just be playing it like a keyboard, right? So what we need to do is turn that off first of all. Now, when I press the A key, that will now get us into automation mode. And you know you're in automation mode when you see these red lines going across the tracks. And you can see that when you touch different controls here, for example, this dry wet, you see the red line going up and down. And you'll see here where it says the name of this. Essentially, these boxes here are the name of what's being automated. So it says shifter, which is this device, and then dry wet, which is this particular control here, right? And almost everything within Ableton Live can be automated, which is amazing. So I don't want this shifter to be on all the time. I just want it to come on at a certain time. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn it off. And since that was the last control that I touched, now you can see it says shifter device on, which is this red line now. You see how it says off, and you can automate it to come on. So let me just put this onto, how much shall we do? The last 2 bars? So we could do 2 bars, right? So whenever you click on the red line, it makes a dot. You see that dot there? And then you can make another dot and then put it up there. So now it's like, basically, when the red line goes vertical, and then it goes to that which says on, that corresponds with the on-off button on this device, which is the pitch shifter. So now we know that the pitch shifter is going to be off for all of these bars here, and then just for the last 2 bars, it's suddenly going to come on. Now we want it to do one more thing. As well as coming on for 2 bars, we also want it to we want this control here to move upwards. So you see how the red line now, it says 0 ST, which stands for semitones, right? Or does it stand for steps? No, it stands for almost certainly semitones, right? I don't know, because Americans call a tone a step, I think, and a semitone a half step. But Ableton Live was developed by Germans in Berlin, so I'm not sure which one they use, steps or tones. Anyway, the point is, no, it is they do use semitones. I'm confusing myself. So anyway, we make the red line go up so that by the end of it, it's got up to 10, or it could even do 12. So what it's going to sound like is this. So the amen goes along normally. And listen to the last 2 bars. Now, I don't know why it wasn't so smooth. I think I was supposed to do the on-off automation here instead. I've done it like an 8th note late. Should be there. So something's going wrong here where you can kind of hear the break doubled, and I don't like it. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete this shifter. But that was just a little bit of a lesson on automation and how to automate different things within Ableton Live. So whenever you want, you can turn up different things. Like, for example, on these ones, we've got a reverb, and you see this dry and wet knob. So you can turn that up gradually to give it more reverb, or the same with this delay. And even these things here, like the delay amount, timing, like it's on, you've got the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, 6. You can change these with automation too. In almost every single thing in Ableton it's possible to make it control itself automatically with automation. So that's a little bit of a tip for you about automation. And let's get back into programming this old school rave synth. Savaged Regime says the doubling artifacts from the pitch shifting is part of the charm, I think. So as you can see, the way how I work and the way how probably a lot of people work when it comes to making this kind of music is you sort of build yourself a loop. You start with the drums, you know, you might not always start with the drums, but what you end up with is the drums, the bass, and some other parts, and you build parts and you build parts until you've got like 10 to 15 tracks of different stuff going on. Now, you might not want them all to be going at the same time, but you do need to kind of play them with each other to make sure they do all fit together so that you can choose. Like, so I could choose if I wanted to have the drums, the bass, the pad, the rave thing all playing at once like this. And it might sound a bit busy, but they are at least all in tune with each other, you know? And the idea is that once you got to the point where your loop has plenty of different instruments, you can then make your arrangement, and what you do is make sections where some instruments drop out and then other ones come in. 16 bars later, that one drops out and the other one comes back, and then it sort of does this pattern, and it's usually in 16 bar sections. And if you zoom right out on Ableton like this, you'll notice that it's got these darker section, like different shades of grey. Like, for example, from 17 to 33, you see how that's a lighter grey. And then from 33 to 49, that's a darker grey. So it actually shows you the 16 bar sections that you use to build up your tune. So when it comes to doing your arrangement, that's a little tip. Now, I was saying last time that back in the old school days, because DJs needed time to actually like mix the two records together using their hands and their ears, and it would take a little while for them to get them perfectly in sync with each other, then the producers that were making the tunes would give them a big long intro so that they could have time to do their mix properly. Then what started to happen is that since the invention of digital DJing and basically, essentially, a lot of the time, a computer is doing the mixing for you these days, let's be honest. Even if you're using CDJs, the tunes have all been analysed in Record Box. You know the exact BPM, and then you put the slider to the right BPM. Tara Bass, have a good one. Thanks for joining. I'll probably see you next week. Anyway, I'm just going on a big long waffle about digital DJing, but it's funny. What's funny to me is that you get people on Facebook saying, like, chatting, you know, not being very nice to sync button DJs. They say, oh, sync button's cheating. But I use CDJs. So you're essentially, all you're doing is just putting the slider to the right BPM and pressing play. And then you're going to hate on sync button DJs. I just find that kind of funny. The truth is that unless you're some old school guy who's still playing vinyls, everybody is essentially getting a computer to beat match for them these days. So, oh yeah, the point of what I was actually going on about is that you don't need to do some big long intro anymore, because the DJ will have, if you just give it like 32 bars and then make it drop, then the DJ will have plenty of time to get them going together. And it's up to you. If you're into that aesthetic or that like old school jungle sound where the intro goes on for ages, then you can still do it. Seebs fam, are you a DJ? And if so, what kind of medium do you prefer to play? Me personally, I have turntables and I have a vinyl collection. Right now it's in storage because this apartment that I live in is so small that there's literally nowhere to put a DJ booth kind of thing in here. So I do have a controller as well. And, you know, so I basically do all kinds of DJing. Real vinyl, digital vinyl, which is like a Serato type thing, and controller. And, you know, as you know, I'm more of a producer anyway. So DJing for me personally is kind of a secondary thing. It just allows me to play my tunes, but I'm more into producing. And let me know in the chat, guys, are you DJs as well, or are you just into production? I like that. Seebs fam saying he's not going to start DJing until he's basically produced a load of tunes. And that's a cool attitude, because it means that when you finally do start playing, you're just going to only play your own tunes. And then when people come and see Seebs fam live, it's just going to be, you know, just a load of exclusive tunes that no one else can get. And I actually quite like that. Oh yeah, there's this gunshot.
Wait. Let me talk to them.
Let me talk to them. There's so much, by the way, I only sampled the first couple of minutes of this, I'm sure if I listen to the whole thing, there just must be an absolute goldmine of samples in here.
And dub plates, you should have got a translator.
I love this bit.
You spent all that money on PAs and dub plates, you should have got a translator. We can't understand the word you're saying.
That's amazing. Right, anyway, I'm stalling because I don't know what to do next, but I do know what to do next. It's create more instruments or sample more things. So let's keep going through some of these. So I've said before, like, you know, if you want to use a piano in your tune, but you want it to sound like it's from the early 90s or whatever, don't use a high quality piano VST from these days, because it's going to sound way too high fidelity and too new school. Instead, just go and get these cheesy piano samples and put them into the simpler and just play them at different pitches, and then it's going to sound more 90s. Alright, 0G disc 3. Strings. That's pretty cool. Alright. That's getting thrown in. Instruments, simpler. Drag that in. Let me go back to the production folder. It's either 3 or 4, I think. So I'm going to try and use the tuner. And if it doesn't work, I'll use my ears. So let me turn the MIDI keyboard back on. So it's saying it's at A sharp. So I need to go up by what, 3 or 4? That's a D. That's a C sharp. That's a C. And as you can see, it's sort of all over the place, but it's basically already a C, so I'm not going to do any more detuning than that. Now bear in mind that when this string thing plays, it's not going to be at the same time as the cheesy rave stab, so I'm just going to mute that for a bit. And also let me turn on warping and put it on Complex Pro. You know what? I keep doing the same pattern. Right. Dum, 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 dum. I'm just gonna. How about if I just loop that and see? Now I know that's going to get tedious, but what I'll do is this is going to be a subtle like background element. What it could do is just double that first F, so it goes yum 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 yum. Wait. Like this. You know, it could work. Like I say, Sometimes I just do instruments that are designed to be layered lower, so it doesn't really matter if it's making slightly more of a repetitive, cheesy rhythm, because it's going to be a bit of a subliminal one. This it's not going to be like a loud lead that's in your face. So here's how it sounds with everything. And I'm sorry, Seebs fam, I never saw when you said number one. Let's hear it. Number one. You know, loads of these could be thrown in. Oh, piano number one. Sorry, yeah, your comment was from ages ago and I've just completely missed it. Where were we then? I think that was in this other 0G2. Was it these I was going on about? It makes me think of Terrorist. Boom, 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 boom. Alright, I'm not going to have this going on and on and on like that. It's actually going to go... It's going to go like this. Every other one is going to have these deleted like that. Bear in mind that's completely dry, it's got no effects on it, so it could sound a bit better when I've got the effects on. How about the normal reverb? I've been using a lot of hybrid reverb on this one, so I use the old school normal reverb on this. And I always tell you guys, don't be listening to stuff soloed. Don't be EQing and doing all this stuff while it's in solo. And then I don't listen to my own advice. So let me EQ it while everything's playing. The GOS says some fast delay can sound good. So I'm guessing you mean like either 1 or 2. I was saying before that like if you try the different delay timings, then it can make a new melody, a new pattern. And some of them sound horrendous. I think 2 sounded pretty good though. And another thing, let's just dive into the delay unit a little bit. Now you see left and right, and obviously if you want to, you can put them on. You can turn off this link. So it's got this little link button here. You can turn that off. You can have one on one timing and one on the other. But another thing you can do is turn off this sync button here, and then you can just have them on milliseconds instead. I think this is like this is how people used to do delay back in the day before everything was like synced to a BPM and to a project, and everything was so strict. You know, back in the day when they had tape delays, like the Roland Space Echo, you would just turn the knob to the left, turn it to the right, see how it sounds, try and get it to the approximate time that you want it. And if you want to sort of replicate how they used to do it like that, and look, you can link them back together so that these two turn together. So for those who just joined us, by the way, you can always watch this, like as soon as this stream finishes, it'll be uploaded as a normal video and you can watch through the whole thing. So if you at a later stage want to go back and see how we did all this stuff, you can. But just as a recap, what I did is, the first thing I did is I chopped up the Amen break in audio, just in an audio track. And I was saying, for the people who don't have Ableton Live Suite or the standard edition, if you've got the intro edition that comes with many, you know, it comes free with many MIDI controllers and different things that you can buy. If you're someone who's using Ableton Live Intro, I'm pretty sure you will be able to chop up a break in this method. So this was for you guys. Then I showed you how to chop up a break using the slice to MIDI track function, which if you right click on the break like this, you'll see it there, slice to a new MIDI track, right? Then you can basically rearrange these MIDI slices, and you can see that I've basically only used 1, 2, 3, 4, the first 5 slices of the break, and then just kind of recycled the same ones over and over again. And this is the hot pants break, and it ended up sounding like this. The next thing I showed you how to do was to make a bass line with an 808 and a load of saturation on it so that people on small speakers will be able to hear it. And I tuned the 808 so that it's in perfect tune. Put the saturation on it, and I did also, by the way, I'm on the wrong track here. The 808's this one. So I did also turn up this attack here to 33 milliseconds, and let me show you the difference, right? If I turn this down, it sounds like this. Now it sounds like a kick, and it has that thing at the beginning that's like, ooh. But bear in mind, we're playing this with a break that has a load of kicks. In fact, we're playing it with 2 breaks that have kicks. So what we're going to do is turn this attack knob up to 33 milliseconds, and this is how it sounds now. That sort of takes the edge off it and makes it sound less like a kick and more like just some sub bass with a load of saturation on it. So then with the 2 breaks and the 808, it sounds like this. Then the next thing I did is I went digging for a vocal sample, and I sampled the Culture Clash and found some absolute gold, including this guy saying this. Whoops.
But this stuff right here, this is priceless.
Along with many other things. And this one here.
Man can never talk down on my thing.
You know, there's all sorts in there. So I've got the drums, bass, I've got a vocal sample which I want to use just before the drop, and then I needed to build up some other little instruments and stuff. So the next thing I did is I went looking for a pad sound. I ended up with this. And bear in mind that I kind of had the idea with all this that I wanted it to be kind of a dark tune. I don't want any happy vibes. I don't want any carnival vibes. It has to be dark, it has to be moody. So the next thing I've come up with is this. This was, well, you know, I say that, but then I ended up with this. Well, it sounds like a hardcore tune, but you could agree that it is still on the dark and moody vibe, kind of. And then I got a string sample and put that in, and it sounds like this. Right, and then in the production folder, there was also, in the strings section, there was also like a violin sound. And the next thing I was thinking is I could, before I was showing you how you can make a violin go on, or make a sample like this go on forever. I'll just show you that again. So let's say you wanted to play this violin. Well, I don't think you really would want your notes to go on any longer than that, but let's say if you did, just for the sake of demonstration, what you'd do is you turn on this looping function, and then you bring down this loop here where it's got a percentage that starts on 100%, and you can take down the length, and you can just adjust it so that you kind of select one area of the sample, and then you can also turn up this fade so it does this. Now let me play it. And what you want to try and do is make this seamless so it can essentially go on forever. So I'm going to press the note and hopefully it'll sound like it goes on forever and you won't really be able to hear it looping. So what I'm going to do is increase the length and want it to try and loop almost all of it. I think you'll agree now that you could basically make that go on as long as you want, and people are never going to know that you're essentially just looping the same part of the violin over and over again. Anyway, one thing that I've been showing you with most of the samples, if you want to use the simpler with these samples, it's a good idea to get the tuner and put it after it and then play a C. And you'll see that it's saying F sharp. Hey, you know what? I'm going to be honest with you, yeah? I contacted Ableton once and said to them, I'm really promoting your software on my channel, so you should give me a discount. I didn't say it like that. I was basically very, very polite about it. And I was like, you know, I'm a YouTuber. I'm making all these tutorials. Probably loads of people are going to buy Ableton because of what I'm showing them. And can I please have a discount? Do you know what? They took a month to get back to me. And then eventually they were just like, no. So that was kind of a little bit sad, but I'm sure they will in the future. I just need to grow the channel a bit, you know. Anyway. Big up the Ableton team still. And I was showing you this. If you can see my webcam. Oops. Don't know if you can see that, but basically a little sneak preview of something that's coming up on my channel, because I've got the first ever edition of Ableton Live on CD-ROM. I feel like there's probably a massive delay on the stream now, but I have an old school copy of Ableton Live 1.0, and I'm going to be showing you guys what it was like back then in 2001, and I'm going to be demoing it and making, well, I'm not going to tell you too much, but I'm going to be showing you that software, installing it from the CD-ROM like they used to do back in the day. So stay tuned for that one, and if you're not already subscribed to this channel, subscribe, hit the like button on this stream, and stay tuned for the old school Ableton Live demo. It's going to be an amazing one. It's definitely going to be the best and most popular video on this channel so far. You know, going back to the little thing about me saying about the customer service, like, in their fairness, it was in the busy period before Christmas, you know, sort of in between Black Friday and Christmas, and I wanted to kind of see whether it would be cheaper for me to get it on Black Friday or whether they'd give me a special discount or whatever. So needless to say, they were just absolutely swamped with tickets, so that's why it took them a month to get back to me. Shout out the Ableton Live customer service team still. Obviously, I'm not going to keep it going like that, but I just wanted to hear how it would sound with like this really long violin sound. Right, I think maybe there. I'm trying to make it just do these two chords. Alright, you know, not everything has to be complex. It could just be these two chords. By the way, guys, if any of you are interested, I also do one-on-one classes via Zoom, and there's this amazing app, which I'm just going to show you really quickly. There's this app, plugin called, what's it called now? Sonobus, right? You put this Sonobus on your master. I put it on my master, and you put it on your master. And then we press the connect button, and we put in like a group name and a password, and me and the student can basically hear each other's Ableton Live in absolute real time with almost no latency whatsoever. And it's a way of collaborating, and it's a way of doing lessons. So if any of you guys are interested in doing one-on-one music production lessons with me, all you have to do is send an email to this email address. Another way of doing music production lessons with me in a very economical way is to just become a channel member at the top tier, which is $9.99 a month, and you can jump in the monthly Zoom call with me and all the other members, and we can just have a chat, share tips. I'll give feedback. In fact, we can all give each other feedback on our tunes, and I'll answer any questions you want and help you with your music. At this stage, you know, when it comes to mixing and stuff, don't forget about panning, because we've got several strings going on and rave synth and stuff. You could have one over to the right, you could have one over to the left, and one in the center, so it sounds more like this. So that allows it to have a bit more space in the mix, you know. But don't forget to listen in mono later to see if what it's going to sound like for the people who don't have stereo setups. Or, you know, this is another thing that people say, is that like many club sound systems are in mono, and therefore you need your tunes to work well in mono. I don't know if you've heard that. I've also heard contrary information from people who install sound systems in clubs and say, actually that's bollocks, and it's actually almost always in stereo. So you hear conflicting information, but I do think it's important, I suppose, to make sure your tunes work well in stereo and mono.
But this stuff right here, this is priceless.
Right, so without further ado, and I really should eat something, but what time is it? It's 11, is it? You know, I'm going to press save here. And even though I'm starving, I'm going to arrange it for you guys. So let's go. So as you can see, what we've got now is sitting at bar 17. And there's a 16 bar gap before it. What I usually like to do, not that it needs to be the same every time, but you can just kind of Command and X everything and then paste it on bar 33. That gives you a 32 bar intro. Or if you want, you could paste it at bar 49 and then you would have this much intro. You know, 3 times 16. Or, you know, music's usually done in 4s. So I used to always get hung up on this. It's got to either be 32 or 64. Because then everything has to be 4 times 4 times 4. You know? But don't get too hung up on that. If it's 3 times 16, that's cool too. And maybe, you know, we were going on about digital DJing before, and how essentially it kind of allows you to be quite lazy these days, pressing the sync button and allowing the software or the CDJ to do most of the work for you. Well, maybe it's good to keep these DJs on their toes and give them something to think about. This here is that vocal sample. I'm just going to put that there. Not going to be exactly there, but it's going to be roughly in that region. So I'll just put it over there for now. Now it's time to think about what this is going to start off with. So let me just play the sort of 4 different instrument type elements. Actually, you know what I'm going to do first is I'm going to create the groups. And before I create the groups, I'm going to rename stuff. So I'm just going to simplify these names. So you see that was already called 1 Amen Brother. Well, I'm just going to simplify that and just call it Amen, because it looks cleaner. I'm going to call this Hot Pants, so you can tell at a glance what stuff is. Now, this is not necessary at all, but I do have to say, right now we've only got 8 tracks. Once you start to get more and more and more tracks, then this does become more necessary because you're searching and searching for something when you could have just labelled it. So what's this now? Oh yeah, that's that rave stab. I'm just going to call these... I'll call these string stab. What should I call it? String stab, why not? And then I'll just call this violin. Right, so what I usually like to do for the people who are new here who've not seen my workflow, I usually have 3 or 4 groups depending on whether it's a vocal tune or not. When I say vocal tune, by the way, now this obviously does have a vocal.
But this stuff right here, this is priceless.
I don't mean that. That's just a vocal sample that's only appearing for a split second. When I say a vocal tune, I mean if you're working with a rapper or you're working with a singer, you've got an actual vocalist and you're recording a load of vocals. So if it's a tune that's just an instrumental, it'll have 3 groups. I like to have drums, bass and instruments. If it's a vocal tune, meaning you've actually worked with a vocalist, you can have your other group for the vocals as well, so you'll end up with 4. And all you do is you click one track, hold down shift, click the other one, and then press Command and G, and that groups them together. And then you can press Command and R, which is rename, and you can just give it the group name. And I have this little system where I put normal tracks in lowercase and groups in capitals. That way you can tell at a glance whether it's a group or a normal track. So the 808, I'm just going to group it together. Even though it's by itself right now, it might be joined by more bass tracks in a bit. So that's the bass group. And then, like I was saying, even though there's a vocal sample in this track, it's not a vocal tune. It's just a tune that happens to have a guy saying something for a split second. So the vocal is going to end up in the same group as everything else, which is called instrum. I always call it instrum because I feel like typing instruments would be too long and I want to abbreviate it a bit. So I just call it instrum. So there's your groups. I'm going to press Command and S to save it. And I'm sick of this little message popping up. And, excuse me, now, as I was going to say, basically we need to decide how this tune's going to start and what the intro is going to be like. So, in this case, the best thing to do is just have a listen to these instruments or samples here.
But this...
Like this one. Would it sound good? So you just have to ask yourself, if a tune started off with this sound, would that be a cool intro to a tune? I think it'd sound alright. Rave stab. That should come probably a little bit later. String stab. It's rhythmic. It would allow the DJ to know exactly where they are in the track. And then there's the violin. And again, this goes back to what I was saying before, that obviously within Ableton Live you've got some really high quality, modern sounding, multi-sampled violin sounds that obviously you could use. But the idea is, we're trying to make this sound like it was made on maybe an Akai sampler in 1993 or something like that, you know. Obviously it doesn't need to sound exactly like that, but we're just going for that vibe. So you get your violin, you put it in the simpler, and it sounds like this. Right, so, anyway, without any further faffing, we're going to start off with the pad. I'm going to put that there. And now it's time for me to introduce some other either hi-hats, rides, or some kind of little thing that allows the DJ. I don't know why I'm always making it so easy for the DJ, but if he just hears that pad, he or she might get a bit lost about where they are. Shout out Infidel UK, thanks for sticking around, man, and I will see you hopefully next week. So, as I was saying, right, if you were a DJ and you just heard this, you might get a little bit lost as to where you are when mixing it into the current tune that's playing. So for that reason, to do the DJ a little favour, which could be me, you know, I might be doing a DJ set of my own tunes. We're going to add a little ride cymbal or hi-hat to go along with it, and it's just a little marker. You can also do this with little sound effects, you know. In fact, to switch it up a bit, maybe I should. So we've got hits. What are hits? Alright, so they are probably more appropriate for an old school, like, breakbeat hardcore tune. I quite like that as like a snare, to be honest. I like layering that with a dubstep snare. It's like you've gotta set yourself a cheese limit. And what I mean by that is, like, you gotta say to yourself, how cheesy am I willing to go with this? Am I gonna just like allow myself to make this into an absolute, like, some of these sound effects are like proper cheesy. But I think sometimes you have to like put a bit of quality control in place. Anyway, you know, in these packs I've got these that I usually love to use: Session Drums Club, Session Drums Multi-Mic. So, Savage Regime said 15 and 16 sounded like something Photech would use. Well, now that you've said that, now let's just see how it sounds. It could be, you know, it's always trial and error. It might be error, in which case we'll ditch it. It could go this sound and then the psh, the other one, 16. You know, I was saying about using it as a sort of a snare. So, you know, when it comes to your drums patterns in drum and bass and dubstep, just to let you know, if you didn't know this already, you see how you've got bar 1 here, and it goes, you've got the 1 there, you've got the 2, so all of this is bar 1, right? Now you see how it goes, let me just zoom it, so it goes 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, and then you've got the 2, right? So they're called beats. So it's like, you might, do you remember back in primary school they used to say there's 4 beats to a bar, and they would just sort of demonstrate it with knocking on some percussion instrument. Anyway, what I'm trying to tell you here is that when you're making drum and bass, you put your snare on 2 and 4. So it goes boom, ka, ka. So the snare goes on the 2 and the 4, right? And then when you're making something that's half time, like dubstep, you put it on 3 instead. Now, you might have noticed I was going on about this being a sort of a snare type sound, and then I put it on the 3. Well, that's kind of, I'm trying to make the intro sound half time, and then it basically sounds like the tune has doubled in speed when it drops. Hopefully I'm explaining myself well with that. You may have, anyone who's like listened to my tunes, you may have noticed that I always love to do like a halftime intro, like a hip hop type intro, and then it drops into drum and bass. This is the sort of same thing. Yeah, maybe I need to use a different sound effect on the second one. I feel like it comes too early though. It should be that one. It goes like this. That's actually going to throw off the DJ, but like I was saying, these DJs need you can't be always giving them tunes that are easy to mix. They obviously they want to feel challenged, you know. They can feel a sense of accomplishment if they actually manage to mix this tune in. That's where the next thing comes in, which is like this thing. So by the way, what we've got is we've got our loop, main loop that we made over here, which is at bar 33, and I like to call that the pool of sounds that we're using, right? So you can draw from the pool of sounds, as in we've got the pad, the rave stab, the string stab, the violin, and all of these are in our little pool of different things that we can draw for to try to make our intro. And when you want to use one of them, all you do is hold down your Alt button and then drag it to where you want it, for example there. So let's take a listen. Okay, sorry, it's muted. Let's play that again. All right, 8 bars in. So let's hear this. Yeah. needs more stuff, but we're getting the basic structure.
But this stuff right here, this is priceless.
Alright, let's just place the vocal sample in better timing.
But this,
As I was saying before, I might ditch the but and just have this dub.
this stuff right here.
And then if we turn off the grid, and that allows us to chop it there and then move this bit to wherever we want it.
This stuff right here, this is priceless.
A little tiny bit earlier.
This stuff right here, this is priceless.
Maybe it was better here, or just a tiny bit.
This is priceless.
And I'm sorry to, you know, I was saying before about the cheese limit. I think it would sound good with a rewind, and I have to say, in the past, I have actually recorded my own rewinds on the deck and stuff, you know. But right now, as I was saying before, I don't have my turntable set up, so we might have to just use a pre-sampled rewind right at the end, and layered quite quietly as well. I don't want it to be in your face.
This is
How about in between what he says? So he says, this dub right here, rewind, this is priceless.
this stuff right here, this is.
What I want is, you know, the idea is that when he rewinds it, our virtual DJ, the guy rewinds it, and then you don't hear these instruments anymore because they were on the imaginary record that's being rewound.
This stuff right here, this is priceless.
Know what I mean? So anyway, we've got the basic structure for the intro now, but I do feel like it's quite boring, so it needs a lot more going on. I do quite like the little boomerang sample though. I'm going to go back to what I was saying about the packs and just choose like a hi-hat or something. So for the people who are new to my stream, sometimes I like to get crashes, rides and hi-hats from the actual Ableton Live drums. I never sample kicks or snares from there, but sometimes it's alright to get yourself a little crash. Or, for example, a ride cymbal or a hi-hat. Not that one though, it sounds awful. Alright, this kit isn't very good. That was a bad example. And you'll notice that actually the kicks, snares and hi-hats are usually in the same place on these. Which means what you could do is put in your MIDI and then try the different kits. Let me show you. You create a MIDI clip. So highlight an area, Shift and Command and M. Go into the MIDI clip. Find the hat. So you've got these. Hi-hat pedal, for example. Did you hear that? It was like, when you press it on the keyboard, didn't sound as bad. When I put in the note, it sounded terrible. That kind of shows me that it's different at different velocities. So anyway, what I was saying is this. You can put in these notes me solo it, and I'll loop this clip. And what I'm trying to say to you is this. I've chosen this hat from a certain drum kit, right? What if I don't like this hi-hat? There's all these different drum kits, and I can just literally drag it on top of that drum kit, wait for it to load. Now it'll be playing me the hi-hat from that one. And you can do this off solo, so you can hear it with the pad. And then if you don't like that one, drag the next kit, drag it on top of that kit and let go. Depending on what kind of a computer you're using, it might take a little while to load it, or it might be kind of instantaneous. And obviously if you're using an older computer that's not very powerful, you might want to stop it and then drag on the next kit and then press play again. If you're using one that's a bit modern, you might be able to get away with continuing it playing and just dragging each one on. I mean, that doesn't sound bad to me. But like I was saying before, it's always important to check out the different velocities as well. So drag this up. I like to drag it up quite a lot, so it's massive, you know. Press Command and A, and that'll highlight all of the hi-hats. Then you can do this. Try them really high. Try them really low. See where you think it sounds the best, you know. You can also try different patterns, like you can do hat, gap, hat, 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 gap. Like delete every second one, basically. Something like that. And also, they don't all have to be the same velocity. You could do the first one higher, like that. What is it? Wait. High, low, low, low. Sorry, no, it's high, low, high, gap, low, low, high, gap, low, low, high. You know what I mean? So it's like that. That sort of accents that one that's on its own. And you end up with something that sounds a little like this. Alright, should we chop up another, or like at least bring in another break and then filter it, which is a classic trick. So I'm going to go to my Jungle Breaks folder. Let's have a look what we've got. I'm going to try and go really quick though. So I've got the think break, which is not the quickest break to chop, and I'll show you why. Because it's in all these different sections, and they all have these gaps in between. And then there's the little guy, Squeaky James Brown. Right, I'm going to try and go as quickly as I can, okay? So if it's boring, just bear with me a sec. Right, so I'm going to I'm going to try and explain it and do it really quickly. So, think break, yeah? What you need to do is each section that you've got is 1 bar long, but as you can see it's going more than a bar. So all you need to do is turn warping on. You can put it to either Complex, Complex Pro, whichever one you want. Go back out of it. Now, let me just turn the grid on to 1 bar. And hold the shift button, put the end of it to 1 bar, and now it sounds like this. Alright, and it's not looping perfectly, but it almost is. Just bring it a little bit this way. Oops, hang on. I'm going to bring it a little bit this way. Maybe like that, because you see that little last thing at the end? I think that might have been what was making it sound dirty. Alright, and then the next one. Let's go, super quick. Sort out the first part. Put it on the grid. Put the warping back on. Complex. Go out of it. And tidy up the end point. Right to the end there. Then holding down shift, put it on the grid. Alright, I'm going to keep going. This one. I'm going to start by putting it on the grid. Wait. I want to split it in this little gap of silence here. I know. There we go. Warp, complex. Put it to 1 bar. Hold down shift and go like that. Wait. Undo that. I pressed caps lock instead. I hate the caps lock button. I swear I pressed the caps lock button more by accident than I ever have done on purpose, you know. Because if you want to do a capital letter, you just hold down shift. Anyway. So, now, I was saying in previous streams that if you don't want to use James Brown's squeaky voice, you can just make a bit of a think break loop without him by doing this. You can get bits that don't have him, like this kick, shuffle, snare. Like all of that. Paste that there. In fact, you could just use this bit and then just sort of copy and paste the last bit. Copy the kick, paste it there. Copy the snare shuffle, paste it there. And I think you've basically got a loop of no James. It's not sounding perfect, is it? I think I was kind of rushing. I was too busy bitching about the caps lock button to chop it properly. Alright, so what we really want to do is make a bit more of an interesting pattern out of it. How about this? Alright, something like this, you know, and then obviously I can do a bit more chopping in a second. And I can throw in James. So, is anyone still there, by the way? Do you guys think I should throw in James Brown's squeaky voice into this intro, or should I just have, like, the think break without James? Cast your vote now. And let's have a listen what we've got so far, because I know I've been boring you just chopping up the think break, so let's have a little treat and listen to the whole tune before I go any further. If anyone's still there in the chat, let me know if you think I should throw James Brown's squeaky voice in. And we were saying last time about what he says, you know, and he's got you know, like what is it? You got yeah, woo, and then you've got Uh-huh. And then you go, you bet. So which one do you think I should throw in? So obviously this is just like repetitive, and that's why it needs the think break with filtering on it.
This stuff right here, this is priceless.
Anyway, what I've got here is the think break doing this. And maybe, you know, I was talking earlier on in the stream at the beginning about how jungle, some people say that jungle pretty much has to be, instead of a loop, it has to be all this mad stuff happening that never really repeats itself. And I kind of agree with that, but at the same time, if you've got a pattern that's just going like this, I think that's jungle. Doesn't really, there's nothing wrong with it repeating itself. Right, you know, I think it says 9 people are watching, but no one's really casting any votes. So I'm just going to go with no James. So sorry, James, but you're not getting included this time. It's just going to be this little quick pattern of the think break. And by the way, this is some subtle stuff for the background. It's not going to be that loud. I'm going to get rid of this first part here. Alright, so this is the think break. This is what it sounds like when it's got none of the vocal samples on it. And when I say filtered, what I mean is this. Let me show you something. So you go to audio effects. So Savage Regime is still here, and he's saying that adding the squeaky James Brown sample would make it a bit too cheesy, and we're not going for a cheesy vibe today. I totally agree with that. Although I wouldn't say he sounds cheesy. I mean, there's a lot of tunes that use those bits that don't sound cheesy, but I think I've kind of already made my decision that he's not getting included anyway. So, but big up Savage Regime. Thank you for casting your vote. So when I say filter a break in an intro, you see this auto filter here, and going back to, for the people who have been here for a little while, before I was going on about automation and how almost every control within Ableton can be automated. So you can turn these knobs, you can make them turn themselves. So this filter frequency knob here can be automated to sort of go up and down, and it adds a little bit more of an interest. And also the reason why we want to filter this break is because it kind of pushes it a bit more into the background, because this isn't the drop, you know. In the drop, the breaks are going to be front and center, blasting in your face, but since we're still in the intro, which is kind of supposed to be a bit more chilled, then that's why we filter down the break, keep it pushed kind of into the background and building up. So it sounds like this. And you can sort of make it go up and down like this, down. You don't have to do it in a symmetrical way. It could go up more, up less. You could make it go right down, and you can make it go right up like this. So let's have a listen to how that sounds. Oh yeah.
This stuff right here, this is priceless.
So that's I think there's quite a big delay now on the stream, so like I do something and then when you guys write about it in the chat it's like a minute later or something. I don't know why that's happened. But that's a bit about filtering breaks, and needless to say, now that I've added a few more elements, some of these need to be put into our little groups. Do you remember I made the drums, the bass and the instruments group? Well, these little sound effects here can be put into the instruments group. You know, sometimes I do actually have a separate group for FX, and the garage rewind can go in there. And this is, what's this now? Oh yeah. So both of these are drums. So we've got this is the hi-hats. Oops, that's not supposed to be capitals. And then this is the think break. In fact, I'm going to call this intro think. And the reason is because at some point later on I might put the think break into the main part of the tune. And I want to be able to differentiate between the intro think and the main think. And you know something? That hi-hat, I can hear that it's got bass in it. And I don't know why they do this. Well, you know, fair enough that they've just given you the raw recording and they've allowed you to process it yourself. But I bet when I put this EQ8 full screen, what's the bet that there's going to be some information down here in the sub-bass region? Look. See that? I don't like that. So just do that. And it can be EQ'd as high as like almost 1K. And then we can put reverb on it. And then when the filtered break comes in, do we want the hi-hat to carry on?
This stuff right here, this is priceless.
So I noticed a couple of things have quite a bit of bass in that I don't like. Number one, the garage rewind or ganja rewind. I guess it's not a big deal because it's not really going to be clashing with any other bass, but maybe just to add to the, you know, the weight of the actual drop, then it'd be better if this was EQ'd like that.
This stuff right here, this is priceless.
Maybe not that much.
This stuff right here, this is priceless.
That's fine. And then the other thing was, when I did the filtering on the break, do you remember on that last bit I went right down? I don't like that. I'm going to bring that back up again. But I do like how it goes right up.
This stuff right here, this is priceless.
To hear how it sounds with some of these other vocals. Do you remember there was these girls at the beginning as well? Wait.
But I'm not trying to hear no AI. Guys, I don't want to hear no AI. In this round, I only want to hear dub plates in.
Right, so for the people who've only just joined us, that's Red Bull Culture Clash, and you're probably going to hear somebody else on the jungle scene sample that very soon, but hopefully you can say you heard it here first.
I only want to hear dub.
So the idea is, like, 16 bars later, you might hear that rewind again. And then she says, I only want to hear dub plates. Like this.
I only want to hear dub plates.
And at that point, I'm going to cut out all the drums. And maybe the bass too.
I only want to hear dub plates.
Actually, you know what? I've done this wrong, haven't I? Because that's only 8 bars later. What am I doing now? So let me just duplicate all this. And then this and this needs to go. And this all here needs to be deleted. And then it goes like this.
I only want to hear dub plates.
It's difficult because she says in this round and I need to get rid of it. That's why I've put so much delay on it. You know what I could do? Here's a little trick for you. So if I chop off dub plates and then we put this onto the texture algorithm, stretch it out like that. Let me just mute the garage rewind a second.
I only want to hear dub plates.
And should the garage rewind go there? I don't know. Right, what we're going to do is, another time, I'm going to have to go because it's coming up to midnight, right? But another time we are going to have her time stretched out and she's going to say, dub plates, in that super old school 90s way. But for now, I'm just going to play what we've got so far one more time. And, you know, you guys already know this is going to be an absolute banger, but I've been starving for like an hour and a half and I really need to have some food. And the samples that are also going to get added next time, we've got this.
Man can never talk down on my thing.
Maybe or maybe not that'll be used, but then, crucially...
But I'm not trying to hear no AI.
I've got to throw in something about AI, you know?
Guys, I don't want to hear no AI.
So... these are all going to get used later on in the tune. But for now, this is what we've got. So, I want to big up everyone who's been in the chat, especially since this has been a 3-hour stream. Thank you so much for sticking around. Thanks to the people who tune in every week. I really appreciate you guys. Don't forget, the best way to support this channel is to become a channel member. There's 3 tiers. The top tier allows you to jump in the Zoom call on a monthly basis where we're all going to help each other. I'm going to answer any questions you've got. And I'm going to give you some tips and tricks. Make sure you subscribe to the channel.
This stuff right here, this is priceless.
And if you want to learn how to make jungle bangers like this, subscribe to this channel because I've got tutorials. I've got more tutorials in the pipeline. And you can watch this one back from the beginning.
I only want to hear dub plates.
Know what I mean? So big up you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening. Have a great week. I'll be back here 8 o'clock Spanish time, 7 o'clock UK time. You'll have to work it out for the rest of the world. Next Sunday and every Sunday. And unless you see me post a community post on YouTube saying I'm not going to be here, then you can just assume that I'm going to be here live streaming, making tunes, interacting with the people in the chat room. So big up yourself. Thank you so much for locking in. Let's just say the drop one more time and then I'm gonna go.
This stuff right here, this is priceless.
Yes, Roughneck Biz. Glad you could catch the end, mate. It turned out to be an alright tune, you know. If you want to know how I made it, just watch the stream from the beginning. You can see me make this from scratch. Anyway, big up you lot. I'm going to do a little cheesy fade out. Thank you so much. Oh, Roughneck, it's time to get a new keyboard, mate. Anyway, thanks to everyone for watching, and I'll see you.